Chapter 772. Mo Xiaoyao and Yili obviously didn't need to line up. Even if they were willing, the customers in front of them would immediately give up their seats. Mo Xiaoyao smiled faintly. Not bad, Li also likes it. If the queen likes it, you can try it. Queen Helan didn't hold back and said with a smile, then many thanks to Prince Ding. Prince Ding really is a good person. Everyone present couldn't help but twitch. Prince Ding was a good person. How many bad people were there in this world? As if she didn't see the expressions of others, Queen Helan happily ate the desserts. Of course, she wouldn't forget to give half to the original owner of the desserts. In just a few short years, Glass City has become so prosperous. Prince Ding and Princess Consort are truly good at governing. Yelu Yi said in a low voice. Yelu Yi had attended Mo Xiaobao's full moon celebration, so he naturally saw the changes in Glass City. Just the area alone had more than doubled. Not to mention, now that the Emperor of Xiling City and the Chu capital had declined, Glass City could be said to be the most prosperous city in the world. The northern tribes were barren and the northern tribes' people lived by water and grass. Even if there were a few cities, they weren't large. Even the most prosperous royal house of the northern tribes couldn't compare to a second-rate city in the Central Plains. Therefore, the prosperity of the Central Plains made the northern tribes' people envious. Although the northern tribes had many cities that they had seized from the Chu state, the northern tribes' people were brave and invincible in war, but governing a country wasn't something that could be trusted just by fighting. In Yelu Ye's hands, the city that was originally considered to be in a good condition was now in a state of decline, like the sun setting in the west. Mo Xiaoyao said faintly, "Seventh Prince is overpraising. Compared to the Chu capital and Jiangnan, the northwest is still very barren. I am just doing my best." The two men didn't think much of his modesty. No matter how prosperous and rich Mo Jingli was in Jiangnan, there was nothing to worry about. But Mo Xiaoyao was different. At least in the short term, no one dared to take anything from him. Although these days in Glass City, in order to avoid suspicion and show respect to the master, the nobles of the various countries did not interact much. However, they all had their own sources of information. At the very least, the West Hill, which had lost a large amount of land but had recovered it from the Chu state, had no intention of provoking Mo Xiaoyao for the time being. Lei Zhenting focused his attention on Mo Jingli of Jiangnan instead. If that was the case, they would have to think twice before going against Mo Xiaoyao. After all, regardless of whether they could win or not, if they ended up benefiting others, then the losses would outweigh the gains. As for Yelu Yi, for the time being, he no longer had any plans to start a war with Mo Xiaoyao. Within the northern militant kingdom, there was news that his brother, the crown prince, was on the move. In addition, during this period of time, the battle with the Mahist army had been intense. This made his mind, which had been blinded by victory, clear up a little. If his brother, the crown prince, gained the upper hand within the kingdom, then even if he defeated Mo Xiaoyao once or twice, it would be of no use. Unless he could completely wipe out the Mahist army, otherwise it would just be a waste of his own strength. Thinking about how Yelu Hong's relationship with the Prince Ding mansion was much more harmonious than his own, Yelu Ye's heart moved slightly. Looking at Mo Xiaoyao, his gaze became more clear and deep. "Prince Ding, I have a business deal that I would like to discuss with Prince Ding. What do you think?" "Business deal?" Mo Xiaoyao seemed to have heard a joke. "Seventh Prince, your northern militant army is still eyeing the border like a tiger watching its prey. What business deal do you want to discuss with I?" Yelu Yi smiled carelessly. There is a saying in the Central Plains, there are no eternal friends, only eternal benefits. At the same time, there are no eternal enemies, right? Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows. That seems to make sense. Why don't Seventh Prince say it? Ren Qining, who was sitting opposite, saw that Yelu Yi wanted to discuss a business deal with Mo Xiaoyao in front of him. His face immediately turned ugly. After all, the northern region and the northern militant army were allies. Yelu Yi, of course, would not offend Ren Qining. He smiled and said, "In fact, this matter is beneficial to everyone. I wonder if the Northern Region King is interested. Ren Qining said indifferently, I'm all ears. Beside them, Queen Helan frowned. What's wrong with you men? Didn't you say that you came out to play? Now that you're sitting together, you're talking about these annoying things. I don't want to listen to your nonsense. Hearing this, Ren Qining frowned in displeasure. In that case, the queen should return to the post house first. Return what? I haven't had enough fun yet. Queen Helan unceremoniously refuted his words, which succeeded in making Ren Qining's face even uglier. Yi Li stood up and said with a faint smile, in that case, why don't Queen Helan come out with me for a walk, so that this consort can show her hospitality? Queen Helan's eyes lit up. She happily stepped forward and pulled Yi Li's arm. Where is the princess taking me to play? There are so many people in Glass City, so many interesting things. I want to buy some more. Yi Li smiled. When the queen leaves, I'll have someone send you whatever the queen likes. Princess Ding, you're really a good person. Let's go. After saying that, she did not care about the other people's reactions and hurriedly pulled Yi Li downstairs. Yi Li waved her hand at Mo Xiaoyao, indicating that it was fine, and followed Queen Helan downstairs. Mo Xiaoyao frowned. From the window, he watched the guards waiting outside the tea house follow them up. Only then did he feel relieved and sit back down. Prince Ding's affection for the princess is really enviable. Noble consort Lu stared at Mo Xiaoyao and gritted her teeth. Looking at Mo Xiaoyao, who was still handsome and had white hair, she felt awe-inspiring. Noble consort Lu's heart felt as if it was bitten by a poisonous snake. Mo Xiaoyao was 1 or 2 years older than her. If the two looked about the same age 2 years ago, now if noble consort Lu took off her veil, even if she was still beautiful, she seemed to be a few years older than Mo Xiaoyao. Mo Xiaoyao acted as if he didn't hear. He lowered his head and took a sip of tea. He said to Yelu Yi, what is the deal, Prince Yelu, please say it. The woman who was ignored, even the beautiful face under her face was twisted and ferocious. In another jewelry store in the city not far from the tea house, Yi Li and Queen Helan sat across from each other in a quiet room on the second floor. Yi Li leisurely tasted the new tea that the shopkeeper had personally delivered, smiling as she watched Queen Helan curiously play with the various exquisite jewelry on the table. After a while, Yi Li asked softly, does Queen Helan have something to say to this consort? Hearing this, Queen Helan put down the jewelry in her hand and raised her head. The arrogant and curious smile on her face gradually disappeared. It was replaced by the determination rarely seen in women of the Central Plains and the wisdom and calmness rarely seen in women of the Northern region. The sudden change made the originally arrogant young woman look a little more imposing. Queen Helan nodded and said with a smile, I knew I couldn't hide it from Princess Ding. Yi Li smiled and said, the queen showed goodwill to this consort on the first day. If this consort couldn't see through it, wouldn't I disappoint the queen? It's just that I don't know what matter the queen wants to discuss in private without the Northern Region King. Queen Helan looked deeply at Yi Li and said in a deep voice, I want to cooperate with King Ding's mansion. No, it should be. We, the people of the Northern Region, want to cooperate with the Prince Ding mansion. Chapter 773. People from the Northern Region. Yi Li paused for a moment and said, isn't it the Northern Region? There were now two kinds of people in the Northern Region, the native people of the Northern Region and the Central Plains people who claimed to be the survivors of the previous dynasty. These so-called survivors of the previous dynasty were just the people of Dechu State who had turned to Ren Qining or had been taken in by him in recent years. Ren Qining trusted the Central Plains people more. If he wanted to restore the orthodoxy of the previous dynasty, he would have to suppress the people of the Northern Region and even abandon them completely in the end. Otherwise, his so-called orthodoxy of the Central Plains would not live up to its name and would not be accepted by the Central Plains literati. Unless he was willing to use the Northern Region as the country's name and rule the Central Plains as a foreign race. But in this way, not only would he be resisted several times or even hundreds of times more than before. Even the Central Plains people who were originally loyal to him might betray him. From the very beginning, there had been irreconcilable contradictions between the two tribes. That was why Mr. Qingyun told Ren Qining that he was wrong from the beginning. After pondering for a moment, Yili asked curiously, "Can Queen Helan make such a decision?" Queen Helan raised her head and said proudly, "Since I'm here, I can naturally make the decision. Our northern region is not like your central plains, who only lock their daughters in their boudoirs. We can do what men can do. Our family has always had few children, and I have no brothers or sisters. After my father passes away, I should take over the position of patriarch. And after my cousin passes away, according to the rules, her family should be replaced by me or my children. But those annoying Central Plains people around Ren Qining control the rights of the people of the northern region. We just want to take back what belongs to us." Yili had considered doing something through Queen Helan, but she did not expect the young Queen Helan to be such an important person. She was a little surprised for a moment, but she had always been calm, so Queen Helan naturally could not see through her thoughts. Yili looked at her and said softly, "I heard that the former queen of the northern region was also a beautiful woman, but unfortunately, we didn't have the chance to meet." Queen Helan's eyes suddenly turned red at the mention of this. "If it weren't for Ren Qining, how could my cousin have wronged herself like that? My cousin gave up the position of clan leader for him, and he went to guard against my cousin everywhere, letting those women anger her. He even found an opportunity to kill all the people his cousin trusted. If it wasn't for cousin saving him back then, how could this ungrateful bastard be where he is today?" Looking at Queen Helan's angry appearance, Yili sighed in her heart. With Ren Qining's martial arts and influence, how could he be in danger in a place like the northern region? He was afraid that the encounter back then was a conspiracy. However, Ren Qining was willing to spend money for his so-called great cause. "Queen, I think you should know. Your cousin's death." This wasn't a secret anyway, so Yili thought it was best to make it clear. Otherwise, she didn't want to be stabbed in the back in the middle of a collaboration. Queen Helan said firmly, "I know. My father said that these grievances can be put aside for the time being. We people in the northern region are trustworthy. As long as Princess helps us drive Ren Qining out, we won't go against the Prince Ding mansion." Yili raised her eyebrows and smiled, "If so, what benefits can I get?" Queen Helan said, "The army of the northern region will all return to the original border with the Dechu state. Although your central plains is good, our northern region's White Mountain Black Water is not bad. We just want to live our own lives." It wasn't that the people in the northern region had no ambition at all, but that the development of the people in the northern region hadn't reached the point where they could bear their ambition. Before Ren Qining appeared in the northern region was inhabited by tribes. The people in the northern region also lived a life of fishing and hunting. Not to mention that the people in the central plains generally farmed, they didn't even raise horses and sheep like the northern tribes. The residents were naturally very simple, and Ren Qining brought too many changes. However, not everyone could accept the earth-shaking changes in less than 20 years. From the occasional fighting between tribes in the past to the current fighting with the regular Dechu state and the Mahist army. The people in the northern region suffered the heaviest losses. The people in the northern region were not stupid. It was almost foreseeable that if this continued, even if Ren Qining really unified the world one day, the people in the northern region would probably die out. Therefore, they decided to drive Ren Qining and his cronies out and take back the rights that belonged to the people in the northern region. Perhaps one day, they would also participate in this battle for supremacy, but that was a matter for a very, very long time in the future. It was definitely not now. Yili was silent for a long time before she nodded and said, "Queen Helan's proposal is very tempting. If Queen Helan sincerely cooperates, then I think it's possible." Such a straightforward reply made Queen Helan stunned for a moment. In her impression, the people of the Central Plains always liked to think twice before acting. It was rare to see someone as clear-cut as Yili. "Princess, can you make the decision?" Yili smiled, "If I can't make the decision, wouldn't it be a loss for the Queen to come to me?" Queen Helan was a little apologetic. "I originally wanted to ask the princess to pass a message to Prince Ding for me. Moreover, I also heard that the princess is very powerful. Maybe Princess Ding can help me persuade Prince Ding. Prince Ding may not be willing to cooperate with me. You Central Plains people always like women to intervene in these things. Yi Li smiled and said, I can make the decision. But, the Queen has to let me see the sincerity of the northern region, right? Otherwise, how can I trust the Queen? Queen Helan nodded and solemnly took out a box and put it in front of Yi Li, saying, This contains the sacred object of my ancestors in the northern region. With it, you can exchange all the people of the northern region's 26 clans to do one thing for you. As long as you mention it, all the people of the northern region will go through water and tread on fire for you. This is the most honorable treasure of our northern region. For the time being, the princess will keep it. Yi Li opened the box. The inside of the box was covered with brown patterned animal skin, which looked like the skin of a tiger. There was a short knife on the animal skin. It looked a little rough, but many of the engravings on it had been blurred and rounded. Obviously, it had been there for a long time. The material of the short knife was neither iron nor copper. It was not a common jade knife, but seemed to be made of stone. Although Yi Li was not superstitious about the binding force of tokens, she also knew that some people believed in the so-called sacred objects. The Queen is not afraid that I won't return it? Queen Helan said seriously, if so, the northern region will do everything to bring back the sacred object. But I believe that the princess and Prince Ding are not such people. Yi Li put away the box and nodded, tomorrow at the latest, the prince and I will give the Queen an answer. Only then did Queen Helan reveal a smile. She nodded and said, Thank you, Your Highness. Chapter 774. After Yi Li and Queen Helan finished their discussion and reached a satisfactory agreement, Queen Helan happily followed Yi Li downstairs with a large pile of adjusted jewelry. After this deep conversation, both of them had a deeper understanding of each other, and their admiration and respect for each other increased. As soon as they went downstairs, they saw Mo Xiaoyao and the others sitting in the parlor downstairs, waiting for them. Not only were Mo Xiaoyao and Ren Qining looking for them, but even Yelu Yi and noble consort Lu were there. Noble consort Lu and consort Yun couldn't help but have a strange look in their eyes when they saw Queen Helan holding boxes of various sizes and wearing exquisite jewelry on the flying fairy bun, which was very popular among the women of the Central Plains. Fenghua Building was originally a property under the Prince Ding Mansion, and it was also one of the best jewelry shops in the entire Dechu state. The things it made were naturally exquisite, and there was no woman who didn't like to tidy them up. Seeing them come down, Mo Xiaoyao stood up and stepped forward to take Yi Li's hand. He smiled at Queen Helan and said, It seems that the Queen is very satisfied with the jewelry here. Queen Helan smiled happily and said, Yes, the jewelry of the Central Plains is really beautiful. Princess Ding said that you can give these to me. Is it true? Mo Xiaoyao smiled faintly and said, Since Princess Li said so, of course it's possible. It's Princess Ding's honor that the Queen likes them. Queen Helan held the boxes in her hands, her fondness overflowing in her words. Then I won't be polite. Thank you, Prince Ding and Princess. You're welcome, Queen. Yi Li smiled as she watched the two of them exchange greetings. She asked in confusion, Why are you here? Mo Xiaoyao said softly, I heard that you came to Fenghua Building, so I came to wait for you. Why is Queen Helan the only one to choose? Didn't Princess Li like anything? Yi Li waved her hand and said, I can't use those. Let's leave them first. She did have a lot of jewelry, but she didn't really use many of them. Many of them were placed there as decorations or given away. Mo Xiaoyao didn't care and said with a smile, A few days ago, Fenghua Building found a very good piece of white jade. I'll make a hairpin for you later. Prince Ding was so gentle and considerate that the women standing next to him were envious and jealous. Imperial concubine Yun could not help but praise, Prince Ding and Princess really have a good relationship. Your Majesty, don't you think so? She nodded her head. Princess Ding Mansion, Queen, and Queen Helan, Princess Helan and consort. I have many beautiful pearls. I'll get someone to send them to you later, okay? The beautiful sea was CC. Beautiful she, beautiful of course, some. Yili didn't hold back and said with a smile, then many thanks to Queen Helan. Ren Qi-ning left with Princess Helan and Consort Yun. Noble Consort Lu, who wanted to say something, was also taken away by Yelu Yi. Mo Xiaoyao and Yili happily walked out of Fenghua building and headed in the direction of Princess Ding. Just by looking at the happy expressions on their faces, it was clear that both sides were very satisfied with this negotiation. Before they reached the entrance of the Prince Ding mansion, they heard that it wasn't as quiet and solemn as usual. Instead, it was a little noisy. Walking forward, they saw a very familiar figure. The golden-haired young man also saw them and immediately flashed his bright white teeth, running toward them. Beautiful Princess Consort, it's great to see you here. Mo Xiaoyao's face was gloomy, is that so? I don't think it's good. What are you doing at the Prince Ding mansion? It's best if you're here to cause trouble. I will have a reason to arrest you, then. Mo Xiaoyao's mind darkly filled in all kinds of ways to torture people. Although the golden-haired man couldn't see Mo Xiaoyao's thoughts, his intuition still made him tremble and turn toward Yili. Yili smiled helplessly, who are you? What business do you have at the Prince Ding mansion? The golden-haired man smiled excitedly, of course there's business. I'm a merchant from the western region's Jiaolan country. My name is Lance. I want to do business with the owner of this city. Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows and said indifferently, aren't you doing business in Glass City right now? Or do you have something special to sell to I? The golden-haired man shook his head, no, I want to do a very, very big business. There are many magical things in the east. I want to sell them to the west even further away. When I was young, I went there with my father. The people there have a lot of gold, but they don't have beautiful silk, beautiful porcelain, or magical tea. If I sell my country, I'll quickly become a rich man. At least the golden-haired man knew how to read people's expressions. Seeing that Mo Xiaoyao's expression wasn't very good, he added, of course, there's also you. We'll all become the richest people. When he spoke excitedly, the golden-haired man began to dance with his hands and feet. Mo Xiaoyao and Yili exchanged glances. The Prince Ding mansion was very rich, but they didn't mind having more money. After all, fighting wars and raising an army had always been a money-burning job. Why don't you come in with us and we can talk about it in detail? Yili said with a faint smile. Of course, it's my honor. Beautiful princess. The golden-haired man said happily. His employee had warned him that he might be kicked out, but he was very lucky to get a chance on the first try. The heavens really favored those who were diligent and knew how to seize opportunities. The young man thought happily. He seemed to see countless glittering gold waving at him. Beautiful. Mo Xiaoyao, who was walking in front, sneered. He waved his hand to summon the guards. Call Han Mingyue and Han Mingxi over. And young Master Qingchen, let them deal with this guy. The young merchant from the western region called Lance followed the guards into the large Prince Ding's residence with a face full of excitement. The white-haired monarch told him that he didn't know much about business, so he had to wait for someone to come and talk to him. He also suggested that he stroll around the mansion's garden. This made Lance's impression of Prince Ding rise exponentially. After seeing countless superiors who pretended to know what they didn't know, this monarch who had the courage to admit his weakness was so great. No wonder this city was more prosperous and stable than any other city he had ever seen. In June, the Prince Ding mansion was still full of flowers. Lance curiously looked at these flowers unique to the east, and wondered if he could bring them back to the western regions to plant. Just as he was admiring the beautiful scenery in the garden, he saw two people walking towards him. The two figures, one red and one white, were particularly eye-catching in the garden full of blooming flowers. Lance's gaze was firmly fixed on the figure in red. Her tall and slender figure, as well as her beautiful face. Her black hair was casually tied up with a ribbon, and there was a lazy smile on her lips. All of them gave people a strange sense of beauty. Chapter 775. Although she was not as gentle and delicate as the beautiful princess consort, she had a different style. Thus, Lance once again ignored the man in white beside the woman in red and ran over with a flower in his hand. "Beautiful Miss Dongfang, may I have the honor of having afternoon tea with you? If you are not married like the beautiful princess consort, please consider accepting my deep love." The two people in front of him were stunned. They were obviously shocked by this sudden display of love. After a while, the woman in red asked in a low voice, "What did you say?" Lance was stunned. This lady's voice seemed to be worse than the beautiful princess consort's. But a perfect beauty like the princess consort was probably rare. However, this red-clothed beauty was also a rare beauty. "If you are not married, please accept my deep love." Lance raised his head and said sincerely. Bang! What answered him was a fierce and heavy punch. Lance was hit so hard that his head was in a daze. He could not react for a moment and shook his head. Beautiful little, bang. Han Mingxi mercilessly punched him, turning the blonde man's original image from a lowly dog into a national treasure. "I scared your dog eyes, I am a man." Eh. The Dongfang lady, who was originally aggrieved and too violent, was stunned. Then he looked seriously at Han Mingxi's red clothes and handsome face. Only then did he notice that this beauty in red was about the same height as him. And, Han Mingyue next to him looked at her angry brother, then looked at the blonde man with a pair of panda eyes. She could not help but lower her head and laugh. "Brother!" Han Mingxi flew into a rage out of humiliation. He broke free from Han Mingyue's hand. "Don't stop me, I want to kill him." "Alright, he is probably a guest of the Prince Ding mansion. You can just punch him a few times to vent your anger. Isn't Princess Ding still waiting for you to discuss matters?" Han Mingyue advised. After listening to her brother's words, Han Mingyue angrily gave up the plan to continue beating Lance. She fiercely threw a sharp glare at him and went to Yi Li's study. Lance, who was following behind, looked dispirited. He actually confessed to a man. Just the thought of it gave him goosebumps. Shaking, Lance decided to follow his employee's advice and asked the matchmaker to introduce him to a gentle and beautiful lady as a wife. The East was too scary. He couldn't tell the difference between men and women. The worst thing was that they all had long hair. Poor Lance would never know why he was punched twice. In Yi Li's study, when Han Mingxi and the others arrived, Mo Xiaoyao and Su Qingchen were already there. Seeing Lance's new look, Yi Li was a little stunned. Similarly, when Lance saw Su Qingchen, who was more handsome than Han Mingxi, and then looked at Han Mingxi, who was still waiting for him fiercely, he blinked and lowered his head. Seeing the murderous look between the two, Yi Li helplessly interrupted, "Let's wait for Mo Jingli to deliver the item first." "Big brother, Xiaoyao, shouldn't we talk about the people in Glass City first?" Su Qingchen also didn't want to continue arguing with Mo Xiaoyao on this matter. Either way, everyone had to rely on their own abilities. He lowered his eyebrows and thought for a while before saying, "So, the northern tribes want to negotiate peace with us. It would be best if we could form an alliance to deal with Xiling and Yelu Hong together. Does Yelu Yi think that the people in the Prince Ding mansion are all idiots?" If it was in the past, Yelu Yi would have believed this suggestion. But after the Mahist army took over the emperor of Xiling City, the area that was originally connected to the northern tribes now belonged to the Prince Ding mansion. This meant that the northern tribes and Xiling's plans wouldn't clash at all. As the saying goes, befriend the distant and attack the nearby. Yelu Ye's actions were meaningless and wouldn't benefit the northern tribes at all. Mo Xiaoyao laughed. "Does he think that we're all idiots? I'm guessing that such an idiotic idea wasn't thought of by Yelu Yi himself. But this summer, the northern tribes suffered from a drought and the area they took over in the north was full of war. There's less than a tenth of their food left. It's not hard to understand why Yelu Yi wants to make a deal with the Prince Ding mansion. If he could control the northern tribe's food, he would immediately have the upper hand in the battle with Yelu Hong. Unfortunately, the prince has already decided to help Yelu Hong." Su Qingchen smiled faintly. How should we calculate it? Yelu Hong is also the son-in-law of the Central Plains. As long as Princess Ronghua is the crown princess, I don't mind helping him. Mo Xiaoyao laughed. Perhaps he could arrive safely, and perhaps he wouldn't be discovered by the Empress Dowager's people. Unfortunately, it was too late for regrets now. Yi Yu. A cold voice entered her ears. Yi Yu was stunned. She turned around and saw Mo Jingli standing at the door. Prince Li, why are you here? Yi Wenhua had already ordered people to guard the door and courtyard. Other than her mother who brought her food, no one was allowed to enter. Mo Jingli stared at her coldly. I can come in if I want to. Yi Yu was delighted. Are you here to take me away from here? Mo Jingli stared at her. Where is the medicine I want? Yi Yu's expression changed slightly. She forced a smile and said, we agreed that after we arrived in Jiangnan, I would only give it to you after the matter was done. Mo Jingli flung her back onto the bed. You gave the medicine to Mo Xiaoyao, didn't you? Yi Yu's expression changed when she heard this. Mo Jingli was furious. Bitch! He had only come with a glimmer of hope, but when he heard the truth, he couldn't hold back his anger. Everything was ruined by this bitch. Because of her cleverness, he had to pay 10 or even 100 times the price to get what was originally within his reach. Prince Li. Yi Yu called out. Mo Jingli was indeed very irritable. Do you know what Mo Xiaoyao asked me for? The 4 treasures of the nation. It's because of you. Yi Yu was dizzy from Mo Jingli pulling on her clothes. The 4 treasures of the nation. She knew that they were the 4 most precious treasures in the Chu Palace. She had wanted to take a look at them when she was the most favored. She had only mentioned them once, and Mo Jingqi had scolded her for half a month. It was said that even the most favored noble consort Lu didn't have the chance to see them. In the past few years, the treasures represented not only the value of cities, but also the face and dignity of the Dechu state's imperial family. Yi Yu knew that Mo Jingli hated her to the core right now. She quickly said, Prince Li, take me away from here. Even if you don't have them, I can help you deal with the Empress Dowager. Mo Jingli sneered, deal with the Empress Dowager? Do I need you to personally deal with I? Who do you think you are? I realized, the reason why I couldn't get anything from you before was because I was too gentle with you. I won't make that mistake again. Tell me everything you know honestly, and I'll let you suffer less. Impossible. Yi Yu gritted her teeth. This was her last and only bargaining chip. If she told him everything, she would die. Mo Jingli revealed a cruel smile. Impossible? Gradually, do you think this person is still impossible? He waved his hand, and 2 guards at the door walked in with a child less than 10 years old. My son. Yi Yu turned pale with fright. She had hidden the child very well outside the city. Why? Mo Jingli smiled with satisfaction. Yi Yu, you think too much of yourself. Do you really think that I will help you support this kid to succeed the throne? I hate that I can't kill every one of Mo Jingqi's sons that I see. I'll leave her to you. Get what I want no matter what. With that, Mo Jingli looked at Yi Yu with disgust, then turned and left. In the remote courtyard, the miserable cries of a woman could be heard occasionally. In less than an hour, the guards left inside walked out. In the room, Yi Yu knelt on the ground. Her body was already covered in wounds. She quietly hugged the dying child in her arms and couldn't help but burst into tears. At this moment, she really regretted it. If she had stayed in the countryside of her hometown, it would have been better than being poor for the rest of her life. Second sister. At the door, Yi Ying stood gracefully in a light-colored dress. She looked at Yi Yu with a smile in her eyes. Her gaze was tender and touching. Yi Yu came back to her senses. She quickly rushed over and grabbed Yi Ying's hand, saying, help me get a doctor. My child is injured. Yi Ying gently pulled her hand away. A cold smile appeared on her delicate face. Second sister, the prince ordered that no one is allowed to call a doctor. I can't make this decision. Seeing the expression on Yi Ying's face, Yi Yu looked at her gentle and delicate sister in shock. Why? Why? Yi Ying sneered. Second sister, why didn't you think about why when you wanted to get close to the prince? What did you say? Anyway, the prince doesn't favor me. How can you help me when you're here? What do you want to help me with? Is snatching my husband helping me? I didn't. Yi Yu said with difficulty. She had never thought of snatching Mo Jingli. That was just a temporary expedient. Why didn't her sister understand? I'm begging you. He's your nephew. Help me save him. Yi Ying's face showed a trace of resentment. Where did his father take my son? My son's whereabouts are unknown. He can go to hell too. After saying that, Yi Ying pushed Yi Yu away and turned to leave without mercy. Yi Yu wailed weakly. She could only watch as her sister walked further and further away. Chapter 777. Looking at Yi Ying leaving without mercy, Yi Yu wanted to chase after her, but she was in so much pain that she could not move. She could only hug the unconscious child and sob bitterly. If she had not wanted to rely on Mo Jingli to regain a more honorable status, she would not have ended up like this. However, no matter how much regret she had, she couldn't bring herself back to reality. Not long after, a courtyard in the most remote corner of the Yi residence was on fire. In the front yard, Yi Wenhua and Madame Yi were politely sending Mo Jingli out. Although Yi Wenhua was polite on the surface, he wished that Mo Jingli would never come again. Originally, she did not want to agree when Mo Jingli came back and asked to see Yi Yu. However, Madame Yi was not satisfied and agreed to let Prince Li see Yi Yu. At this moment, looking at Mo Jingli's gloomy face and Madame Ye's disappointed face, Yi Wenhua did not know what to say. Master, it's not good. The backyard is on fire. The servant behind him hurriedly caught up and shouted anxiously. Yi Wenhua was stunned and asked, where is the fire? The servant said, It's the courtyard where Prince Li and Princess Consort went. This answer was very strange. If it was the courtyard where Second Miss was locked up, everyone would think that it was related to Mo Jingli. However, the answer was that Prince Li and Princess Consort Li went to the courtyard. Prince Li just came out and the courtyard was on fire. Even a fool would think that Prince Li had something to do with this. Everyone turned around and saw thick smoke billowing out from the backyard. Wang screamed, Yi Wenhua said in a low voice, send someone to put out the fire. After that, he ignored Mo Jingli and bowed to Mo Jingli. Then, he turned and left for the backyard. Wang Shi came back to her senses and followed Yi Wenhua to the backyard. Mo Jingli's eyes darkened as he stood at the entrance. He glanced at Yi Ying beside him and said in a deep voice, return to the post house. Yi Ying nodded obediently. Yes, Prince. In the blink of an eye, the somewhat irritated door suddenly became silent. Old Madame Yi was still in a daze. How could this be? When the news of the fire in the Yi mansion reached the Prince Ding mansion, Mo Xiaoyao just smiled indifferently. Are you sure this time? That woman won't come back to life again, right? Ah Jean, who was standing at the door, nodded seriously and said, Prince, don't worry. Ah Jean personally went to check. It's definitely Yi Yu. Mo Xiaoyao smiled in satisfaction. Very good. You've just returned, and I'm already asking you to do this. Thank you for your hard work. Go back and see Uncle Mo. Ah Jean nodded and turned to leave without asking any more questions. Mo Xiaoyao's calm voice came from behind, you don't have to tell the princess consort about this. Ah Jean paused and then continued to walk out. The prince probably felt that there was no need to tell the princess consort about this kind of small matter. The study was silent. Mo Xiaoyao looked at the letter on the table and showed a trace of a happy smile. At this time, Yili's courtyard was very lively. Not only were there second Madame Su, Qin Zheng and the others, there were also first Madame Su, Empress Hua, Murong Ting and the other womenfolk who were close to Yili, Mo Xiaobao, Ling Junhan, Su Jirui and the twins who just turned 1 month old were also there to join in the fun. There were only 2 days left until Mr. Qingyan's birthday. Li City had already prepared everything that needed to be prepared. For this matter, the Prince Ding mansion had been busy for many days. When it really came to this time, it was rare for them to have some free time. A group of womenfolk gathered at Yili's place to visit the 2 babies. The 2 Madame Su held 1 baby in each hand. Looking at the pink and tender babies, they couldn't bear to part with them. The Su family only had 1 child, Su Jirui. When the 2 madams saw the babies, they naturally liked them very much. Moreover, ever since the 2 little things opened their eyes, they were exceptionally obedient and smart. One was happy when he saw people. Although the other was more quiet, he was also very obedient. They were even easier to take care of than Mo Xiaobao when he was young. Even Mo Xiaoyao had to admit that these 2 little guys added together couldn't be compared to Mo Xiaobao when he was young. Good boy. My Xiaolin. He really looks. First Madame Su was especially fond of Xiaolin. Once she held him, she refused to let go. Although he was still a small child, it was clear that Xiaolin looked more like the Su family. First Madame Su, who had never been able to hold a grandson, naturally liked this smiling little guy. Second Madame Su also liked Xiao Xian. Although she had a grandson, she didn't have a granddaughter. Not to mention a granddaughter, the Su family didn't even have a daughter. Seeing this obedient and beautiful little girl, second Madame Su also fell in love with her. Yili looked at the obedient baby lying in the arms of the 2 Madame Su. She covered her mouth and smiled. Aunts, since you like children, why don't you urge 3rd brother and 4th brother to get married sooner or later? As soon as she said this, Hua Tianxiang and Mo Wuyo, who were sitting next to her, immediately blushed. Mo Wuyo blushed and hid behind Empress Hua. Hua Tianxiang had nowhere to hide. She could only glare at Yili with a red face. Li, you. Qin Zheng covered her mouth and smiled. Li, is right. Tianxiang, I'm waiting for you to enter the Su family to accompany me. Murong Ting hugged her baby son and smiled. Isn't that right? My Junhan is almost 5 years old. You're so shameless. Hua Tianxiang stomped her feet in embarrassment. Second Madame Su was very satisfied with Hua Tianxiang as her future daughter-in-law. Seeing her embarrassed, she quickly said, "That's enough. Why are you talking about this in front of their daughter? I've already discussed it with your uncle, grandfather, and Madame Yang. The old duke died for the country, so there's no time to get married during the mourning period. We can only move the wedding to next year. When the time comes, Tianxiang and Wuyo will marry into the Su family. It'll be a good story." Wuyo was still young, but Hua Tianxiang wasn't young. Originally, it would be good if they could get married later during the mourning period. However, at that time, Su Qingfeng would be fighting in the Chu capital. They had no choice but to wait until after the mourning period. Second Madame Su was originally worried that she couldn't find a suitable daughter-in-law. Now that the candidate had been decided, she wasn't so worried. What's more, after Master Qingyan's birthday banquet, they would start to prepare for the wedding. Slowly and leisurely until next year. Empress Hua looked lovingly at her red-faced niece and daughter. Being able to marry into a family like the Su family was definitely a rare good marriage for them. She could rest assured. Although the Hua family was quite famous and had a noble family background, everyone knew that after Duke Hua passed away, the Hua family could be considered to have declined. Even if their descendants lived up to expectations, they wouldn't be able to rise again in 10 or 20 years. The Su family didn't have many members. Family background wasn't important. Hua Tianxiang and Mo Wuyo naturally wouldn't suffer any grievances if they married into the Su family. Hua Tianxiang was fine. She and Su Qingfeng both liked each other. It could be said that they liked each other. However, between Mo Wuyo and Su Qingbai, it was more Madame Su who played a role. Moreover, Su Qingbai wasn't someone who would suppress his anger like Su Qingfeng. It was difficult to see through his feelings. Mo Wuyo wasn't very old. Even if she had some feelings for Su Qingbai, she was still muddle-headed when she was set to marry into the two families. It wasn't that she was unwilling. It was just that she was inevitably at a loss and at a loss. His age and ability were far from enough to establish a strength that could protect him against the various forces in the world. Yi Li nodded. She was very satisfied with Mo Xiaoyan's clear-headedness and understanding of the situation. The two of them thanked Yi Li and sat down on the empty stool at the side. Only then did they see the acquaintances sitting beside them. They couldn't help but be surprised. Imperial Mother. Imperial Sister. Although noble consort Lu and Empress Hua had always been at odds, Mo Xiaoyun and Princess Zhenning did not have any ill feelings towards Empress Hua. At most, Princess Zhenning was very jealous of Mo Wuyu. But that jealousy seemed even more meaningless now. Because of noble consort Lu, Mo Wuyu didn't like these two siblings. But he also knew that their days in Glass City in the past 2 years were not much better than his experience in the past. Looking at Princess Zhenning's face and the way they acted when Chu Jing was besieged. In the end, they were still biological siblings. Mo Wuyu couldn't help but feel a little soft-hearted. He nodded and said, "Are you all well?" Princess Zhenning's eyes were slightly red. She bit her lip and nodded. She lowered her head in shame. When she knew that Mo Wuyu was sent to Nanzhao King, she had gloated in her heart. Now, seeing that Mo Wuyu didn't show a look of disdain and ridicule because of her disfigured face, and didn't even show the pity she hated the most, she felt a little ashamed in her heart. Imperial Sister, Mo Wuyu smiled and said, "Just call me Wuyu. I'm no longer a princess now." Mo Xiaoyun nodded in understanding. He said to Empress Hua and Mo Wuyu, "Mother, Sister Wuyu." Empress Xinghua felt a little strange for her mother, but it was not excessive. Empress Hua was originally Mo Jingqi's wife after all. All the princes and princesses had to call her Imperial Mother. She was the official mother of Mo Xiaoyun and the other princes and princesses. Empress Hua nodded slightly. She looked at Mo Xiaoyun and said lightly, "You have suffered in the past 2 years. Since you have endured it, forget the past. Live well with your sister." Mo Xiaoyun nodded and said, "Thank you for your guidance." Prince Chongqing and Princess Zhenning came to the Prince Ding mansion. "What's the matter?" Yi Li asked. Mo Xiaoyun looked at the many womenfolk in front of him and didn't hide anything. He nodded and said, replying to Princess, "My sister, and I heard people say that there is a woman beside the 7th prince of the northern tribes. The description is very similar to Imperial Mother, is it true?" Yi Li looked at the two people staring at her and sighed softly. She nodded and said, "Yes, the woman beside Yelu Yi is called Qing Yi Na. It is said that she is the fiancée of the 7th prince. Although I haven't seen her real face, according to Princess Ronghua, she is exactly the same as noble consort Lu. If you have any doubts in your heart, you can go to the post house and ask her." Mo Xiaoyun's expression was slightly subservient. He said in a deep voice, "My sister and I went to the post house twice to ask for an audience, but we were rejected. So, we came to see Princess, to ask Princess to check." Yi Li thought for a moment and said, "Qing Yi Na is someone brought by Prince Yelu. She is also a guest. It is not convenient for this consort to send people to check on her. However, you can go and ask Princess Ronghua. Princess Ronghua often went in and out of the palace when she was young. She should be more familiar with that person than this consort." In fact, listening to Yi Li's words, the two of them had basically confirmed noble consort Lu's identity. Not to mention Mo Xiaoyun's gloomy face, Princess Zhenning's hand that was holding the handkerchief had turned white and was faintly trembling. Yili looked at the two of them and said earnestly, no matter whether that person is noble consort Lu or not, you have to think thrice before you act. You must not act rashly. If you have any difficulties, come to the residence and talk to me and the prince. Although this is Glass City, Yelu Yi is the prince of the northern tribes after all. His power is not small. You must not act rashly. Mo Xiaoyun was silent for a moment and nodded, many thanks for princess's reminder. We understand. We won't disturb princess any longer. My sister and I will take our leave first. Yili nodded lightly and looked at Princess Zhenning and said softly, don't stay in the room all day. Come out and walk more. It's not so bad outside. Princess Zhenning bit her lip and nodded before hurriedly leaving with Mo Xiaoyun. Seeing the siblings leave, everyone's mood became somewhat gloomy. Hua Tianxiang frowned and said, Princess Zhenning's face was really damaged by noble consort Lu. She used to walk around the palace often, but she did not have much of an impression of Princess Zhenning. In fact, noble consort Lu's 3 children were not very similar to her. Princess Zhenning, as a daughter, was not valued by her own mother. Mo Jingqi also doted on Mo Wuyo, so she did not have much of a presence in the palace. She was completely not like the daughter of a concubine who was crowned the head of the harem. At this time, seeing the scary scars on that originally beautiful face, Hua Tianxiang could not help but sympathize with her. Chapter 779. Yili shook her head and said, no one knows what happened. When we rescued her, noble consort Lu had already disappeared. She was the only one in the cold palace. If we hadn't rescued her in time, I'm afraid everyone would have thought that noble consort Lu was the one who died. In this way, no matter what the truth was, in the eyes of the surviving Princess Zhenning, it was her biological mother who threw her into the sea of fire to die. Empress Hua frowned slightly and said, I think Zhenning hates noble consort Lu to the core. Will something happen if they go to her? With Prince Changxing, there should be no problem. Yili frowned and said. Speaking of noble consort Lu, everyone couldn't help feeling disgusted. They naturally knew about noble consort Lu's feelings towards Mo Xiaoyao and how she forced Mo Xiaoyao to marry her. Coupled with Princess Zhenning's matter, their disgust towards noble consort Lu went up a level. Murong Ting hugged Ling Junhan and said hatefully, if I meet that kind of woman, I'll whip her directly. Mo Xiaobao, who was sitting next to Yili and eating snacks obediently, blinked and asked, Mother, are you talking about the white-clothed auntie in the Chu capital? Hearing this, Yili looked at Mo Xiaobao with some surprise. You still remember noble consort Lu? Mo Xiaobao pouted unhappily, that auntie was the most annoying. She always looked at me and mother with strange eyes. I wanted to tell father that if she looked again, he would dig her eyes out. Who knew that she would die? So he's not dead yet? Yili's head was throbbing with pain. How could he be so excited? When did she teach him such a cruel idea? At that time, Mo Xiaobao was not even 7 years old. In the northern tribe post house, Princess Ronghua received the news that Prince Changxing and Princess Zhenning wanted to see her. A strange smile appeared on her lips. She ordered the attendants beside her to immediately invite the two in. Mo Xiaoyun and Princess Zhenning had come twice before, but they were sent away by the posthouse's people. They couldn't even enter the door. This time, he asked to see Princess Ronghua. Sure enough, he was soon taken in. Princess Ronghua specially received the two people in the main hall of the post house. When she saw Mo Xiaoyun and Princess Zhenning, she was full of smiles and pulled them to sit down. When I was still in the Chu capital, you were still children. I didn't expect that after not seeing you for so many years, you've already grown up. Looking at the young man and girl in front of her, Princess Ronghua sighed. Although she wasn't old yet, seeing a child grow up into an adult made people sigh with emotion. Is Aunt Ronghua doing well in the northern tribes? Mo Xiaoyun asked. Princess Ronghua smiled and said, the crown prince treats me very well. Everything is fine. I've heard about what happened in the past few years. It's just that the two of you have suffered. Mo Xiaoyun was no longer a child who didn't know anything. He smiled faintly and said, "Royal sister and I are also very good. The Prince Ding mansion is very good to us." "That's good. Prince Ding is a kind-hearted person." Although they were not as rich and honorable as the princes of the royal family, compared to those who schemed against each other, their days were much more comfortable. "Now that you've finally come out, don't think about those things. Not everyone has the luck to jump out of this circle." Princess Ronghua felt that it was also a piece of advice to the two. Mo Xiaoyun nodded and said, "I understand. Thank you for your advice, Aunt Ronghua." Princess Zhenning looked at Princess Ronghua and hesitated. Princess Ronghua naturally understood why they came. She raised her hand and patted the back of her hand gently, and said softly, "I've heard about what happened to you. Good child, you've suffered. You want to see Qin Yaina, don't you?" Mo Xiaoyun hesitated and nodded. They had heard before that Princess Ronghua was arrogant and domineering. At this time, seeing her so kind, they didn't like it for a while. After all, they were children born in the royal family. No one was pure and innocent. Naturally, they had some doubts about such a kind Princess Ronghua. Princess Ronghua saw through his doubts at a glance. She smiled and said, "Silly child, who can be the same as when they were young? In fact, I'm not sure if she is. I'll ask someone to invite her over. You can meet her. Don't be impulsive." The two nodded silently. After a while, noble consort Lu, dressed in white, came in. Without looking at the hall, she said coldly to Princess Ronghua, "What do you want to say?" These 2 days, noble consort Lu was in a very bad mood. Not only because after meeting Mo Xiaoyao and Yili on the street 2 days ago, but also because she was severely reprimanded by Yelu Yi when she returned to the post house. It was also because Mo Xiaoyun and Zhen Ning came to see her yesterday. Before coming, she really didn't think that these two children would be in Glass City. More importantly, she didn't know how to face them, and she didn't want to see them. Princess Ronghua raised her eyebrows and said, "What do I want?" "Someone is looking for you." "Who?" Noble consort Lu's voice was hoarse. She looked at the two teenagers who were looking at her coldly in shock. In the blink of an eye, 2 years had passed. Mo Xiaoyun was much taller than 2 years ago and looked much calmer. Princess Zhenning sat next to Mo Xiaoyun. Her face was also covered with a veil, but her eyes were as cold as ice. Noble consort Lu's heart trembled. "You? Who are you?" After a while, noble consort Lu calmed down and said reluctantly. But how could her shocked eyes and familiar aura be hidden from her own children? Seeing that noble consort Lu didn't intend to recognize them, a trace of pain and resentment flashed in their eyes. Chapter 780. Noble consort Lu shuddered and snapped, "What nonsense are you talking about? I don't know you. Hurry up and leave." Princess Zhenning closed her eyes and said in a low voice, "Don't you feel guilty at all? I don't know what you're talking about." Noble consort Lu forced herself to be calm and waved to call the guards outside. "Come, drive them out and don't let them in again." "You!" Princess Zhenning stood up abruptly but was stopped by Mo Xiaoyun. Mo Xiaoyun stopped Princess Zhenning, who was about to pounce on them, and said in a low voice, "Sister, let's go back first." Princess Zhenning was dragged out by Mo Xiaoyun, but her eyes were fixed on noble consort Lu. She stared fiercely at her. When Mo Xiaoyun and Princess Zhenning disappeared at the door, noble consort Lu seemed to have disappeared and fell into the chair weakly. Princess Ronghua leisurely looked at her and smiled faintly. "Why are you so heartless? Even if you have 2 children, the royal family of the northern tribes doesn't care. The northern tribes are not as well behaved as us. Besides, with your age, do you want people to believe that you're a virgin?" "Ronghua!" Noble consort Lu glared at her fiercely. Princess Ronghua stood up and smiled indifferently. "Since Prince Changqing and Princess Zhenning mistook me for someone else, I'll take my leave. My future 7th sister-in-law. But, will my 7th brother really marry you?" Noble consort Lu's expression became even more sinister when she heard Princess Ronghua leave the hall with laughter. Her hands hidden in her sleeves were clenched tightly and her long nails dug into her palms, but she didn't feel it. Why should she feel guilty? Everything she did was for the sake of living well, for the sake of revenge. Who knew how much she had suffered? Compared to the suffering she had before she met Yeluyi, what were they? What was there to feel guilty about? Others only thought that Yeluyi was infatuated with her beauty and was infatuated with her. But if Yeluyi was really infatuated with her, why didn't he marry her for so long? But it didn't matter. As long as Yeluyi still needed her, she could manipulate the northern tribes. She would definitely make Mo Xiaoyao and Yili pay the price. In the blink of an eye, it was Mr. Qingyun's birthday. The entire glass city was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. It was even livelier than the New Year. In recent years, with the effective governance of the Prince Ding Mansion in the northwest, the influence of the Su family and Lishan Academy in the northwest had gradually increased. There were countless people in the northwest who had given Su Qingchen and the others favors. What's more, Mr. Qingyun was Princess Ding's grandfather. On his birthday, the people of Glass City naturally celebrated more than any other festival. In the past few years, as Glass City gradually expanded, Glass City imitated Nanzhao Royal City and built a large plaza not far from the Prince Ding Mansion. Behind the plaza was a tall and majestic observation deck. Every festival, the citizens of Glass City would gather here to celebrate. It was the first time that a banquet was held here, but because of this, the commoners were able to enjoy the banquet at a closer distance. Although this was a great test in terms of security, the shadow guards of the Prince Ding Mansion were not afraid of this. When the lanterns were lit, the entire square was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. Countless beautiful fireworks bloomed in the sky. The people in the square cheered. The citizens of the city all walked out of their homes and gathered in the square to enjoy the rare and beautiful fireworks. On the observation deck, there were several banquets that could accommodate thousands of people. When this place was built, it was originally designed to hold large banquets. After all, the Prince Ding Mansion was not large and Glass City was not suitable to be a true capital city. If they built a temporary palace here, it would be a waste of money and manpower. Building this plaza and observation deck would not only allow the commoners to play here, but also allow them to gather during festivals. At the same time, it also solved the problem of the Prince Ding Mansion not being able to hold large banquets. After all, they couldn't hold banquets on the city gate tower every time, right? The two sides of the observation deck were concave forward, forming a semicircle. No matter which corner one sat in, one could see the whole picture of the entire square. It was like a three-level staircase, allowing all the guests to see the host at the top. This was originally something that Yi Li had mentioned, but in the end, it was Su Hongyan who completed it himself. In the past 2 years, many of the Prince Ding Mansion's banquets were held here. It could be considered as sharing the joy with the people. At the top of the building, there was a large golden longevity character on a red background. If one looked closely, they would find that this longevity character was made up of countless small longevity characters of different shapes. The characters were elegant and graceful, but it was young Master Qing Chen's handwriting. Tonight, the person sitting at the top was no longer Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li, but the white-haired young Master Qing Yun. Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao sat to his right. Below him sat Su Hongyu, Su Hongyan, and the other young masters of the Su family. Below them were the influential guests from various countries and the civil and military officials of the Prince Ding Mansion. With such an arrangement, how could the people present not see the Su family's status in the Prince Ding Mansion? When the banquet started, Yi Li and Su Qingyan helped young Master Qing Yun to his seat. Then, they walked to Mo Xiaoyao's side and sat down. After all the guests were seated, there was an empty space in the plaza below. Hundreds of women in colorful clothes held colorful lanterns and danced to the melodious music. Such a grand scene was naturally much more magnificent than the banquets that people were used to in the palace. Many of the people gathered here to watch the fireworks also had a feast for their eyes. Mo Xiaobao sat between Yi Li and Mo Xiuyao. He also curiously looked at the grand scene in front of him. Although he was the young heir of the Prince Ding mansion, Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li had never hidden him at home. He had seen all kinds of people. But it was the first time for such an unprecedented grand occasion. The nobles of the various countries below also noticed the black-clothed child in the middle of Prince Ding and Princess Ding. At such a young age, he was already very handsome. A pair of big black eyes looked curiously at the people below. He did not feel the slightest fear. This child was the eldest son of the Prince Ding mansion, who was named Yu Chen by young Master Qing Yun. Not to mention that Prince Ding and Princess Ding just got a pair of twins. Just by looking at the child in front of them, he was much more outstanding than everyone present. The Prince Ding mansion's heir could have such an imposing manner and composure at such a young age. The Prince Ding mansion should be proud to have a son like this. The guests on the observation deck weren't idle either, as there were singing and dancing below. While enjoying the rare magnificent song and dance, they chatted with the people sitting next to them. Then, they all came forward to present young Master Qing Yun's birthday gifts. Perhaps they learned from Yelu Ye's lesson at Mo Xiaobao's one-month birthday banquet. This time, the gifts were quite well behaved. The gifts that the guests sent were all festive and appropriate birthday gifts. Mo Xiuyao and Yi Li were very satisfied with this. After all, they prepared this banquet for young Master Qing Yun's birthday. Naturally, they did not want any accidents to happen and ruin the old man's trust. Even Mo Xiaobao personally presented 100 lifespan painting that he wrote. Although Mo Xiaobao was not yet 8 years old, under young Master Qing Yun's guidance, his studies were very good. His handwriting was also decent, making young Master Qing Yun very pleased. Lei Zhenting smiled, "Such a treasure, only Prince Ding can appreciate it. If it was me, it would be a waste." Men. Not long after, a few West Hill guards came in carrying a tall box. They gently placed the wooden box on the ground and stood respectfully to one side, waiting for orders. Rather than calling it a box, it was more like an exquisitely carved wooden cabinet. Everyone's eyes involuntarily focused on the carved sandalwood cabinet in the hall. They didn't know what gift Genom of Gojoseon had given Prince Ding that made him so cautious. Looking at everyone's reaction, Genom of Gojoseon smiled with satisfaction. "Open it and take a look." A guard stepped forward and pulled the wooden cabinet from above. A faint fragrance immediately filled the viewing platform. Everyone couldn't help but exclaim. In the hall where the wooden cabinet was originally placed, there was a woman in white kneeling. This woman looked to be no more than 15 or 16 years old. Her appearance wasn't particularly beautiful either. There were at least 4 or 5 women present, including Princess Ding, who were more beautiful than her. However, she had a very strange attraction that attracted the gazes of all the guests present. He only felt that there was not a single part of this woman that was not perfect. It even made people feel that her not-so-beautiful appearance was flawless. If it was a more beautiful face, it would instead destroy this temperament. The woman was dressed in a plain white robe. Her hair was also casually draped over her shoulders. She didn't have any accessories on her body, and even her beautiful eyes didn't have any fluctuations. However, those who met her eyes couldn't help but hear their own thumping heartbeats. Genom of Gojoseon, what is the meaning of this? Before Mo Xiuyao could speak, Su Hongyan's face had already darkened. Disregarding everything else, today was Master Qingyun's birthday, yet Lei Zhenting had sent a beautiful young girl as Prince Ding. It was truly somewhat rude. Lei Zhenting didn't mind. He smiled at Su Hongyan. "I know that today is Master Qingyun's birthday. This is indeed impolite. However, I just got this treasure and hurriedly had someone send it to Glass City. This is why I wanted to give it to Prince Ding as soon as possible. After all, such a treasure, leaving it in Ai's hands is really unbearable." Lei Zhenting revealed a tacit understanding smile and nodded at Su Hongyan. Mo Xiuyao lowered his head to look at the white-robed woman. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Genom of Gojoseon, what is the meaning of this? Lei Zhenting smiled and said, Prince Ding and Princess Consort have been married for almost 10 years. However, the residence has yet to take in a concubine. I know that Prince Ding has such a wonderful woman like Princess Consort as his companion. This world's common women won't be able to catch his eye. This is why I sent this woman. I think this woman is definitely a good match for Prince Ding. Many people didn't think much of Lei Zhenting's words. After all, Princess Ding could be said to be a peerless woman. Just based on appearance, she didn't lose to the white-robed woman. However, looking at the white-robed woman, they couldn't say anything bad about her. Thinking about it again, Princess Ding could be Prince Ding's wife at any time. However, if there were a few more beautiful concubines, it would also be a good story. Thinking like this, not only did they not have any thoughts about the white-robed woman, many people had other thoughts. Of course, this was excluding the messenger sent by the Emperor of Xiling. The messenger sent by the Emperor of Xiling only had his head lowered as he stared at the fine wine in the cup in front of him. It was as though the fine wine had suddenly become a nectar. In reality, it wasn't until Lei Zhenting mentioned this that the people seated noticed that in all these years, Prince Ding hadn't taken a concubine. The entire Prince Ding mansion only knew that Princess Ding was a woman. Even though Princess Ding was a peerless woman, but in the eyes of the nobles in this world where men were respected, Prince Ding's actions were absolutely inconceivable. Not to mention the nobles of other countries, even many of the subordinates of Prince Ding's residence had some thoughts of disapproval. It wasn't that they had any opinions about Yili. It was just that since ancient times, 3 wives and 4 concubines had been the norm. Moreover, Mo Xiaoyao was the owner of the Prince Ding mansion. In the eyes of many, he was destined to ascend the throne in the future. He absolutely couldn't place his thoughts on a woman. Seeing that many people had expressions of approval and envy, Lei Zhenting smiled in satisfaction. He raised his head to look at Yili sitting next to Mo Xiaoyao. Yili's expression was calm as usual. There was even a faint smile at the corners of her lips. On the other side, a trace of anger flashed through Su Qingyan's eyes. He was about to stand up. Su Qingbai, who was sitting next to him, held him down. Su Qingyan angrily said in a low voice, "Fourth brother, what are you doing?" Su Qingbai glanced at the indifferent Mo Xiaoyao and said, "This is Prince Ding and Li He's matter." The Su family wouldn't ask for Mo Xiaoyao to only have Yili for the rest of his life. And if they weren't willing to insist on this matter, then no matter how many promises they made, it would just be nonsense. The Su family could only support Mo Xiaoyao's decision and Yili's decision unconditionally, no matter what choice she made. Chapter 782. Definitely enough. Mo Xiaoyao's cool voice rang out from the observation tower. The entire place was silent, and the outside was bustling with noise and excitement. I can't see how this woman can compare to Ai's princess. Lei Zhenting smiled confidently and said, "The princess consort is naturally a rare woman in this world, but the one in front of us isn't bad either. I can guarantee that her martial arts, talent, ability, and even medical skills and miscellaneous studies are among the best among the women in the world. If the prince doesn't believe me, why don't you ask the princess to come down and spar with her?" Impudent! Mo Xiaoyao shouted angrily. A white shadow flashed across the sky, and everyone couldn't help but cry out in surprise. Mo Xiaoyao had already appeared in front of the white-clothed woman, and mercilessly raised his hand to strike the top of the woman's head. Just when everyone thought that the woman was going to die, the white-clothed woman suddenly raised her head and raised her hand, blocking Mo Xiaoyao's attack. Mo Xiaoyao snorted, and once again clawed at the woman's shoulder. The white-clothed woman didn't meet force with force this time, and instead retreated. Mo Xiaoyao's claw missed, and a hole was made in the wooden cabinet beside him. From this, it could be seen that if this claw had really grabbed the woman's left shoulder, it would have been crushed. Mo Xiaoyao didn't pursue after his 2 moves had failed. He waved his sleeve and flew back to his original seat. However, a gust of wind shot out from his sleeve towards the white-clothed woman. Just now, the woman had narrowly avoided the attack. She had just stood firm, but this time, she couldn't avoid it. She could only raise her hand and take it head-on. Unexpectedly, she only took a step back. Even her expression didn't change. She just stood silently beside Lei Jinting. Mo Xiaoyao stood above, looking down at Lei Jinting and the white-clothed woman, and calmly said, "To be able to take 3 of I's moves and not lose, you do have some skill." In fact, this wasn't just some skill. Just now, Mo Xiaoyao had used at least 80% of his strength, and the white-clothed woman was able to receive it without any change in expression. This proved that whether it was her moves, reaction, or internal energy, they were all not bad. Even in the martial arts world, she would definitely be ranked. Most importantly, she didn't look more than 16 years old. This level of skill was about the same as Mo Xiaoyao's when he was the same age. Lei Jinting wasn't surprised, and smiled. "I said that I would definitely satisfy Prince Ding." Mo Xiaoyao looked at him, and revealed a mocking smile. "Who said that I will accept her? Seeing that she has some real ability, this prince will not fuss over this offense. Scram back to where I came from." Once these words were said, the crowd couldn't help but go into an uproar. Even the white-clothed woman's expression changed slightly. For such a beauty to be rejected by Prince Ding without any hesitation, in the eyes of the crowd, it was no different from a waste. After all, in this world, no one was forced to choose between a beauty and Princess Ding. Wasn't it the dream of all men to have a beautiful wife and concubines? Lei Jinting slightly frowned, and looked at Mo Xiaoyao with some difficulty. "Prince Ding is really going to reject her?" Mo Xiaoyao coldly smiled, but didn't say anything. Lei Jinting seemed helpless, and sighed. "Does Prince Ding know where she came from?" Mo Xiaoyao said, "I already said, scram back to where you came from. She comes from Infinite Boundless Mountain." Lei Jinting's words were like a drop of water in a pot of oil, instantly causing the entire viewing tower to explode. Infinite Boundless Mountain was actually a place that the people of Dechu State were not unfamiliar with. It was the only main peak in the central and southern part of Dechu State, and was currently in the hands of Lei Jinting. However, the reason why everyone was familiar with it was not because of how beautiful its scenery was, or what miracles had appeared before. In truth, Infinite Boundless Mountain was hidden within countless mountains, and the surrounding peaks all looked the same. If one didn't have someone familiar to lead the way, it would be impossible to tell which one was Infinite Boundless Mountain, and it was very likely that one would get lost in the depths of the mountain. Legend had it that there was a hidden family in Infinite Boundless Mountain. The people of this family were proficient in astronomy, geography, medicine, divination, and astrology. The men were talented, and the women were capable of assisting the king, and supporting the country. Every 60 years, a descendant would descend the mountain to temper themselves. However, this family was dominated by Yin, and in the past few hundred years, it was extremely rare for a man to appear. As for the women who descended the mountain to temper themselves, all of them were extraordinarily intelligent. The most famous amongst them were the empress of the previous dynasty, and the queen of Dechu State's second generation, as well as the queen of the Western Tomb from 60 years ago, Lei Jinting's late grandmother. It was said that the ancestor of the Su family had also married a woman from Infinite Boundless Mountain, although the Su family had never acknowledged it. However, it was precisely because in a short few hundred years, 3 empresses had appeared, and their appearance had brought about the prosperity of the dynasty. From then on, Infinite Boundless Mountain had a secret connection with the rise and fall of the dynasty. Now, this white-clothed girl had chosen Prince Ding. Could it be that, the gazes with which everyone looked at Mo Xiaoyao had become somewhat different? Lei Jinting smiled. "Now Prince Ding should understand, right? It's not that I want to make things difficult for Prince Ding and Princess, and intentionally destroy the relationship between the two of you. It's just that." Everyone somewhat understood now. This matter was naturally not something that Lei Jinting could decide. If Lei Jinting could make the decision, even if he himself could not marry this white-clothed girl, he could still let his son do so. How could he let his enemy have it so easily? Everyone involuntarily looked at Prince Ding. Prince Ding, who had just solemnly vowed to scram back to where she came from, Would he still be so resolute in the face of this white-clothed young lady with such a background? The viewing platform was silent for a long time. Just when many people thought that Prince Sting was about to agree, Mo Xiaoyao's cold voice resounded in the hall. Scram! Chapter 783. Mo Xiaoyao had never liked to shout loudly, but perhaps due to his personality, his voice always carried an extremely faint coldness. Therefore, when his face really darkened, even if it was just a casual sentence, one could feel the cold killing intent contained within. The girl who had originally been standing by Lei Zhenting's side suddenly raised her head, looking in shock at the man whose hair was as white as snow. Clearly, she had not expected that Mo Xiaoyao would actually reject her so mercilessly. It must be known that although Infinite Boundless Mountain's successor only entered the world once every 60 years, the significance of this, as well as the tangled and complicated relationship between Infinite Boundless Mountain and the various countries over the past few hundred years, caused everyone to treat this with caution. Originally, Lei Zhenting's suggestion to present her as a present had already caused her to feel somewhat displeased. However, she also knew that Lei Zhenting's words were not false. She had indeed come a step too late, as Prince Sting already had a Princess Sting by his side. Although she did not believe that Princess Sting was superior to her, the 10 years of relationship between Prince Sting and the princess were not fake. A man could have countless beauties, but only needed a virtuous wife. In a situation where he already had Yi Li, her advantage was not so obvious. However, even so, her willingness to be a secondary consort was already a huge concession in her eyes. She had not thought that Mo Xiaoyao would actually reject her. This was originally already a temptation that no man would be able to reject. However, thinking about it from another perspective, if he was unable to reject such a temptation, wouldn't Prince Sting be as unbearably vulgar as the majority of men in the world? Prince Sting, are you really going to reject me? The white-clothed girl stepped forward, asking. Mo Xiaoyao laughed coldly, I am not rejecting you. I want you to immediately scram. The white-clothed woman's face paled. No matter how calm and confident she was, it was unbearable for her to be humiliated in front of all the heroes of the world. The woman in white looked at Mo Xiaoyao who was staring at her coldly, and then looked at Yi Li who was sitting next to him. She asked, Princess Sting, what do you say? Yi Li looked up and asked in confusion, what does this imperial consort want to say? The woman in white stared at her and said in a low voice, I've heard that Princess Sting's talent and beauty are unparalleled, and that you are Prince Sting's virtuous wife. Presumably, Princess Consort also knows what to do. Prince Sting is the best. She definitely won't spoil Prince Sting's plans for unnecessary matters. Yi Li slightly frowned and asked in a soft voice, Miss, do you really want to know this consort's thoughts? The woman in white was slightly startled. She nodded and said, of course. Yi Li indifferently said, from a woman's point of view, this consort only wants to tell you one word, scram. From a princess consort's point of view, this consort also wants to tell you to scram immediately. As a wife, she should naturally follow her husband's lead. Therefore, this consort still wants to tell you to scram back to where you came from. Well said. On the other side, Su Qingyan couldn't help but loudly praise. You. The woman in white's expression changed, but she didn't become angry. Instead, she quickly calmed down. She calmly looked at Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao and said, it seems like today isn't the time to discuss matters. Why don't we wait for the two of you to think things through before we discuss? After she finished speaking, she didn't care about the gazes of the people in the hall. She calmly turned and walked away, leaving behind a group of dumbfounded people. Yi Li's words clearly improved Mo Xiaoyao's mood greatly. Pulling Yi Li back to her seat, he looked coldly at Lei Zhenting, saying, Genom of Gojoseon, is this the gift you sent? Lei Zhenting shrugged rather helplessly, saying, I also had no choice. Anyway, the matter has already been settled. Prince Sting can just do as he sees fit. This time, he had really wronged Lei Zhenting. First, let's not talk about whether or not this woman was of any use. Even Infinite Boundless Mountain's reputation and hidden power was enough to make people drool. Even if there was something wrong with Lei Jinting's head, he wouldn't be willing to gift such a person to his greatest enemy. But who asked Infinite Boundless Mountain to be within his current jurisdiction, and who asked him not to offend people of Infinite Boundless Mountain? Of course, there was no lack of thoughts of wanting to see Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li fall out. Still, that was just in passing. Is Prince Ding really not interested in Infinite Boundless Mountain's descendant? Down below, Yelu Yi asked darkly. While the northern tribes belonged to the barbarian tribes beyond the Great Wall, they had also been influenced by the culture of the Central Plains in recent years. This was especially so for those of the royal family, who were naturally very familiar with the legends of the Central Plains. While they didn't completely believe in those legends of Infinite Boundless Mountain, there were times when these so-called legends were also a kind of symbol of the will of the heavens, and when used, might not necessarily be any less effective than a million brave soldiers. Holding Yi Li's hand, Mo Xiaoyao said mildly, "Whoever is interested, feel free to give it a try. I, however, do not have the fortune to enjoy it." Hearing his words, everyone felt both jealousy and admiration in their hearts. They were jealous of Mo Xiaoyao's luck, actually being unable to catch the descendant of a legendary hidden family who had personally delivered herself to his doorstep. At the same time, they also admired him for remaining unmoved in the face of such temptation for the sake of Princess Yi. On the Su family's side, Su Qingbai's sword-like brows furrowed slightly as he looked at Su Qingchen in front of him, saying in a low voice, "Big brother, the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain have also come down to cause trouble. I'm afraid that there will be some trouble." Su Qingchen's smile was gentle and refined as he said mildly, "Fourth brother, do you still remember the last time something happened to someone of Infinite Boundless Mountain?" Su Qingbai furrowed his brows as he recalled, the last one seemed to be Genom of Gojoseon's grandmother. It should be more than 60 years ago. Logically speaking, the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain should have appeared a few years ago, perhaps even 10 years ago. Su Qingchen raised his brows, saying, "The people of Infinite Boundless Mountain do indeed have some ability. Otherwise, they wouldn't have produced so many Empress mothers in succession. However, that's all. If they think too highly of themselves, my Su family is also not afraid of them." Between his brows, an air of transcendent arrogance naturally seeped out, as if he didn't place that so-called legendary family in his eyes at all. Hearing Big Brother's words, the expressions of the others also eased greatly. It was instead Su Qingyan who asked curiously, "Big Brother, have any of our family's ancestors ever married a girl of Infinite Boundless Mountain?" Su Qingze swept him a cold glance. "There has never been anyone of unknown origins who entered the Su family. Go back and take a good look at the family records. The wives of the Su family didn't seek high positions, nor did they seek to be as beautiful as flowers or overflowing with talent. There was only one most important thing, which was to have a clean and upright family background. Those who liked to be secretive would never be able to enter the doors of the Su family no matter what." Meanwhile, the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain, in pursuit of that so-called mystery, just happened to like being secretive the most. Su Qingyan shrunk his neck back, hiding behind Su Qingbai, afraid of this cold-faced second brother as always. Up ahead, Su Hongyu and Su Hongyan, seeing their nephews calm and collected, also nodded their heads satisfactorily. The little interlude just now didn't affect the singing and dancing in the square below. The guests on the viewing tower very quickly began to drink and chat, but there were also many who were clearly a little distracted. Sitting beside Mo Xiaoyao, Yi Li frowned slightly as she looked at the guests below, just feeling that something was missing. Looking down at her frowning appearance, Mo Xiaoyao asked rather worriedly, "What's the matter, Li Li? Did that woman make you unhappy?" Yi Li shook her head, smiling mockingly at him. "Prince's luck with women really isn't bad. Even this legendary fairy reclusive has come to throw herself into his arms." Mo Xiaoyao lifted his arms and pulled Mo Xiaobao, who was sandwiched between them, into his embrace, casually cupping his two paws so that they wouldn't get in the way. Only then did he reach Yi Li's side, curling his lips disdainfully. "What kind of beauty is she? Infinite Boundless Mountain has fallen, hasn't it? It actually doesn't even have a decent woman." Chapter 784. Yili smiled and raised her eyebrows, not commenting on Mo Xiaoyao's evaluation. Although in terms of looks, that white-clothed girl was slightly inferior to Yili, it was not by much. However, there was an extremely inexplicably attractive aura about her. Different from Yili's noble and graceful aura that made others submit to her, it was clearly easier for her to arouse some of the deepest desires in men. This was something that even Su Zuodi and noble consort Lu could not compare to when they were in their prime. Just looking at the expressions of all the guests in the Great Hall just now, it could be seen. Mo Xiaoyao knit his brows slightly. That girl is a little strange. Don't get too close to her, Li. Mo Xiaoyao had seen who knows how many supreme beauties. How could he not see that this white-clothed girl had a strange attraction to others? It was just a pity that this sort of attraction was virtually ineffective on an expert with a strong will like Mo Xiaoyao, and might even cause him to feel repulsed by it. Li smiled and nodded. I know. Why would the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain come down at this time? It has already been over 70 years since the last time, right? Mo Xiaoyao laughed coldly. 10 years ago, the world situation was unclear, and they also did not have the ability to predict the future, so they naturally had to wait and see. Saying that it comes once every 60 years is just a smokescreen to deceive the world. How could those few times when things were really so accurate? When the Dechu state was founded, they just happened to appear when Taizong was vying for the throne. Why didn't they accompany Taizu in conquering the world? There's also Lei Zhenting's grandmother. It was also a good time. Yili came to a realization. If the descendant of Infinite Boundless Mountain really came out once every 60 years so coincidentally, she really had to believe that the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain could predict the future, choosing a master on behalf of the heavens. At the end of the day, Infinite Boundless Mountain's reputation is still not bad. With the reputation of choosing a master on behalf of the heavens, the chosen one would be perfectly justified. It was no wonder that the expressions of everyone present were not right. This time, Yili actually believed that this was not some scheme of Lei Zhenting's. Mo Xiaoyao said disdainfully, choosing a master on behalf of the heavens? No one could stop I from doing what I wanted. Do we need Infinite Boundless Mountain to come and pick I? Yili smiled. This consort knows that our prince is ambitious. I will definitely not rely on nepotism to seize the world. Looking at her bright and smiling face, if they weren't in public, Mo Xiaoyao would have pounced on her and kissed her. Boo-hoo! Mo Xiaoyao, who was unable to move, protested in dissatisfaction, but Mo Xiaoyao mercilessly stuffed a mouthful of food into his mouth. Unable to open his mouth to complain, Mo Xiaobao could only blink his large eyes at his mother in grievance. Unfortunately, in Yili's eyes, he looked like a father feeding his son, although it wasn't very gentle. Yili had always felt that it wasn't good for the father and son to always be at each other's throats, so she didn't disturb their interaction. Is there someone missing? Yili stared down thoughtfully. She had felt that something was missing since just now. However, that white-clothed girl from Infinite Boundless Mountain had come out to cause trouble, causing her to not have the time to think about this. Mo Xiaoyao swept his gaze downwards. Actually, with so many guests, just the observation tower alone had over 1,000 people, it really wasn't easy to discover who was missing. Mo Xiaoyao frowned, pondering for a moment before saying, Mo Xiaoyun and Zhen Ning didn't come. Although these two didn't have any real power, their significance was still extremely great. After all, they were the rightful princes and princesses of the Dechu state, and had even taken the initiative to surrender the Chu capital to the Prince Ding mansion. No matter what, as long as these two didn't commit any heinous crimes, the Prince Ding mansion had to take good care of them. Looking at the two empty seats, Yili's mind flashed, and she abruptly looked towards Yellow Ye's side, saying, Noble consort Lu didn't come. Mo Xiaoyao didn't think much of it, although she's claimed to be Yellow Ye's future princess consort. As long as there's no official wedding, she's not the princess consort of the northern tribes. Since she doesn't have any family background to show, it's normal for her not to come. Yili shook her head, saying, with her arrogance and self-confidence, she wouldn't think that she doesn't have the right to come. For someone like noble consort Lu, even if she was trampled into the mud, she would still think that she was the most noble and beautiful person in the world. Why would she think that she didn't have the right to attend the birthday banquet? Frowning slightly, she said, if that's not the case, where did she run off to? Could it be related to Prince Changxing and Princess Zhenning? Mo Xiaoyao said, even if that's the case, Miss Li doesn't need to worry about them. Mo Xiaoyun and Zhenning both have people protecting them. Even if something happens, it won't be them. Yi Li was helpless, and could only suppress the worry in her heart, waiting for the banquet to end before making a fuss. By the time the banquet ended, it was already close to midnight. Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao naturally brought Mo Xiaobao back to the residence first, and there would naturally be people to take care of the rest. Unexpectedly, just as they returned to the residence, Zhuo Jing came to report, Princess Consort, something happened to Princess Zhenning. Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao could only settle Mo Xiaobao down and follow him to Prince Changxing's residence. When they arrived at Prince Changxing's residence, they realized that Zhuo Jing wasn't exaggerating, something really did happen. Princess Zhenning sat in the main hall in a daze, and there was a pool of half-dried blood on the ground beside her. Princess Zhenning had always been brooding over her appearance, and would never forget to wear a veil in front of outsiders. But right now, her hair was disheveled, and the hideous scars on her face were undisguised in front of everyone. Not far away, there was a white-clothed woman lying on the ground, with a golden hairpin stuck in her abdomen, and her white clothes were already soaked with blood. Shenyang and Mo Wuyo, who had come over at some point, were squatting on the ground to check. Yi Li looked at the woman's face, and sure enough, it was noble consort Lu. She sighed softly, and understood what had happened without asking. Yi Li looked at Mo Xiaoyun who was standing at the side. Mo Xiaoyun's face was pale, and his hands hanging by his side were tightly clenched. He said in a low voice, Princess Consort, I was impulsive and injured the 7th Imperial Consort of the Northern Tribes. Princess Consort, please punish me. Mo Xiaoyun had experienced many unforeseen events these years, and had long understood the fickleness of human nature. If noble consort Lu was really the 7th Imperial Consort of the Northern Tribes, Yellow Yi would definitely find trouble with the Prince Ding Mansion after being injured by them. The best way for the Prince Ding Mansion to settle the matter was naturally to hand her over, and at the same time get rid of him, the Prince of Dechu State. It could be said to be killing two birds with one stone. Yi Li shook her head, and pulled Mo Xiaoyao to the side to sit down, asking, why is Mr. Shen here? How is her injury? Shenyang rolled his eyes in annoyance and said, this old man was about to return after the banquet, but I was caught by this brat on the way back. Mo Wuyo raised his head and smiled at Yi Li, saying, Master and I passed by the entrance of the Prince Changxing's mansion, and just happened to bump into Prince Changxing. Princess Consort, don't worry, Master's medical skills are superb, so there shouldn't be any problems. Shenyang glared at Mo Wuyo and said, what do you mean there won't be any problems? In such a place, what's the use of this old man's medical skills? There was a difference between men and women, and Shenyang couldn't treat an injury in a place like the abdomen. Although a doctor had the heart of a parent, noble consort Lu's identity was really not easy to deal with. Mo Wuyo wasn't afraid of being glared at by him, and said with a smile, then Master can guide this disciple, and this disciple will treat it, okay? Chapter 785. Shenyang reluctantly glanced at the unconscious noble consort Lu, then muttered a few words of advice to Mo Wuyo. After that, he let Mo Wuyo do the work, then walked to the side and sat down to rest. It seems that Wuyo has learned well from Mr. Shen, Yi Li said with a smile. Just by looking at Shenyang's attitude towards Mo Wuyo, she knew that he was very satisfied with this disciple. Shenyang said lightly, she's indeed more talented than the princess. In fact, Yi Li's talent wasn't bad either. It was just that her medical skills required calmness and patience. As Princess Ding, Yi Li was always busy with worldly affairs. How could she have so much time to concentrate on her studies, let alone inherit her teacher's legacy? At that time, Shenyang and Dr. Lin did feel that it was a pity. Mo Xiaoyun stood on the side and listened to their conversation. He vaguely understood that noble consort Lu probably wouldn't die for the time being. For a moment, he didn't know whether to rejoice or regret. Glancing at his sister who was sitting next to him in a daze, Mo Xiaoyun cautiously said, "Uncle Prince Ding, the princess." "Tonight's matter," Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows, "you still want to say that you hurt her?" Mo Xiaoyun froze and nodded, "I was angry." "Xiaoyun will listen to Uncle Prince Ding's punishment." Mo Xiaoyao looked at him with interest for a while before saying, "I didn't expect Mo Jingqi to have such a son. It's not bad. But, why did you take Princess Xin Ning's golden hairpin to kill that woman?" I was, younger brother." Princess Xin Ning, who had been in a daze, suddenly raised her head and stopped Mo Xiaoyun. She looked straight at Mo Xiaoyao and said lightly, "Uncle Prince Ding, I did it. You don't have to save her. If she dies, I'll pay with my life for her." "Royal sister." Mo Xiaoyun was flustered and exasperated. He didn't care about noble consort Lu anymore. However, this royal sister who was only 2 or 3 years older than him had taken care of him since he was a child. Even though she wasn't smart or capable, she still tried her best to take care of her 2 younger brothers when they were neglected by their mother. Mo Xiaoyao frowned in displeasure. "Enough, she is not the princess consort of the northern tribes. Even if she dies, Yeluyi will not seek revenge." "Zhening, tell I, do you really want her to die?" Princess Xin Ning's face was pale. She glared fiercely at the woman in white on the ground. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't say anything for a long time. Mo Xiaoyao said casually, "If you really want her to die, then go over and press that hairpin down further." Hearing his words, not only did Princess Xin Ning tremble in fright, even noble consort Lu, who was lying unconscious on the ground, suddenly widened her eyes. She looked at Mo Xiaoyao in disbelief. Noble consort Lu couldn't hold on because of the blood loss, but she wasn't in a deep coma. She could hear some of the words of the people around her. When she suddenly heard Mo Xiaoyao's heartless words, it was no wonder she woke up from her coma. Mo Xiaoyao, who was thinking of a way to pull out the hairpin, looked helplessly at Mo Xiaoyao. "Uncle Prince Ding, if you continue to provoke her, she really won't be able to hold on." Princess Xin Ning definitely didn't hold back with this hairpin. If it pushed even a little deeper, noble consort Lu would be dead for sure. So they didn't dare to move her, and could only deal with her on the spot. Mo Xiaoyao said seriously, "I's not joking." Mo Weio silently said, "I believe you're not joking, but can you not be so serious right now? Is it really okay to instigate a daughter to kill her own mother?" "That's enough." Yili glanced at Mo Xiaoyao, telling him to shut up. She turned her head and asked, "Weio, is it very difficult?" Mo Weio hesitated, then said, "It's not difficult. However, if you have something to say, just say it." Mo Xiaoyao said unhappily. He was very unhappy that he couldn't go back to hug his precious daughter and then hug Lili to sleep in the middle of the night. If it wasn't for the fact that Mo Xiaoyun and Xin Ning were still useful, he would have just found a place to throw this woman away. In Glass City, Yeluyi probably didn't have the ability to find her. Mo Weio looked at Princess Xin Ning and Mo Xiaoyun, then said with a frown, "This injury isn't in the right place. Also, this woman seems to have miscarried half a year ago. If she's not careful, she probably won't be able to have children in the future." Since she was the future royal consort of the northern tribes, whether she could have children or not was probably a very important matter. Shenyang raised his brows, then looked at Mo Weio and said, "Disciple, your medical skills still need to be trained. Please advise me, master." Hearing his master's words, Mo Weio thought he had diagnosed wrongly, and a trace of annoyance flashed across his small face. Shenyang said, "How is this woman miscarrying half a year ago? She has miscarried at least 3 times in the past 2 years. Don't worry about it. You don't have to care about something that is destined to never exist again. Even if she didn't have this injury, she would still be like this." Looking at noble consort Lu, Shenyang's expression was full of disgust. He naturally knew noble consort Lu's identity, but this wasn't enough for Shenyang to dislike her. However, personally killing her own unborn child was not within Shenyang's tolerance range. Shenyang's medical skills could be said to be unparalleled in the current era. He could even calculate what kind of abortion medicine noble consort Lu had taken. Only a pregnant woman would take an abortion medicine that wouldn't harm her body, and even had some special effects. Mr. Shen, you mean she? Mo Xiaoyun stared at the woman on the ground, unable to ask. She used the dispersing fragrance pill, and more than once. Mo Xiaoyun's expression suddenly became complicated. Princess Ning was a girl, so she didn't know what it was. However, Mo Xiaoyun had been taught by the Lu family since childhood, so Prime Minister Lu didn't hide many private matters from him. Rather than calling the dispersing fragrance pill an abortion medicine, it was better to call it a kind of beauty-preserving holy product. However, it was unknown who discovered that this thing had even more miraculous effects when used during pregnancy. Once a woman was pregnant, her appearance would definitely not be as good as before. Such a miraculous medicine naturally attracted people like a flock of ducks. However, someone soon discovered that women who took this medicine during pregnancy would all have miscarriages without exception, and those who used it less would also give birth to stillbirths. However, the beauty-preserving effect was 10 times better than usual. There were even many women who didn't care about their unborn children for the sake of beauty. This medicine gradually became a forbidden medicine. A woman who lost her father had 3 miscarriages in 2 years, and all of them were caused by herself. Mo Xiaoyun really didn't understand what his mother, who used to be high and mighty, was doing. However, looking at that delicate and beautiful face, Mo Xiaoyun suddenly rushed out of the door and vomited. Although Princess Ning didn't know the inside story, the fact that noble consort Lu had an abortion during pregnancy was enough to shock her. She walked to noble consort Lu's side in a daze and looked down at the beautiful woman on the ground. Princess Ning only felt the resentment in her heart surging out like a burst dam. Bitch! Chapter 786. Princess Ning stared at noble consort Lu, who was lying on the ground, her face full of cold resentment and disgust. Shenyang's words completely shattered the last trace of hope Princess Ning had for her mother. Back when Princess Ning was drugged and knocked unconscious in the cold palace, her face was disfigured. For the past 2 years, she had never stopped hating noble consort Lu. However, this hatred was also mixed with a trace of hope for her mother and an unbreakable admiration. If noble consort Lu sincerely apologized to her tonight, even if there was a trace of guilt and remorse, Princess Ning's golden hairpin wouldn't have pierced her body. However, at this moment, there was only pure disgust and hatred in Princess Ning's eyes. The relationship between mother and daughter was truly severed from now on. Hearing Shenyang's words, Mo Huio didn't hesitate anymore. She raised her hand and quickly pulled out the golden hairpin. For a moment, blood gushed out. Mo Huio ferociously took out the holy healing medicine Shenyang refined and poured it on the wound. Then, she tore a piece of white gauze from noble consort Lu's clothes and began to bandage the wound. Princess Ning didn't hurt noble consort Lu's fatal spot. If the fact that she couldn't have children in the future was excluded, even if noble consort Lu died in the end, it would only be due to excessive bleeding. Now that she had Shenyang's holy bleeding medicine, her life naturally wouldn't be in danger. After bandaging the wound, Mo Huio took out a small porcelain bottle and poured it down noble consort Lu's throat. After a moment, noble consort Lu's originally pale face began to recover its color at a speed visible to the naked eye. Isn't it a waste to let her use such a good thing? Did I give you such a thing for you to abuse? Shenyang stared at Mo Huio and said unhappily. Mo Huio raised his head and smiled sweetly at Shenyang. Master, Uncle Prince Ding and the princess consort must have something to ask. How could they get anything out of her when she was in such a state just now? Shenyang snorted. You're smart. Mo Xiaoyao narrowed his eyes and saw that noble consort Lu's complexion had improved. He nodded indifferently. Since it's fine. Xiaoyun, what do you think? Mo Xiaoyun lowered his hands and said indifferently. Everything will be handled by Uncle Prince Ding. This person has nothing to do with me and my royal sister anymore. Even though we are no longer related. She turned her head and glared at noble consort Lu's beautiful face. Gritting her teeth, she said, she still owes me a face. Hearing this, noble consort Lu's expression changed. She glared at Princess Zhenning and said angrily, "What do you want?" Princess Zhenning looked at her, gritted her teeth, and said word by word, "You ruined my face, shouldn't you compensate me?" Noble consort Lu sneered and said, "I gave birth to you. Even if I took your life, you should accept it, let alone disfiguring your face." Mo Xiaoyun walked to Princess Zhenning's side and took her hand. He looked at noble consort Lu and said, "I just said that we have nothing to do with you anymore." Noble consort Lu snorted disdainfully. The relationship between mother and son couldn't be broken so easily. In noble consort Lu's opinion, Mo Xiaoyun and Zhenning would always be her children. She could disdain them, but they absolutely couldn't be disrespectful to her. She forced herself to stand up and sit in a chair on the side. Although she had applied medicine and bandaged her wound, it wasn't something that could be healed in a short period of time, no matter how miraculous the medicine was. The intense pain made her expression become a bit twisted. She looked at Princess Zhenning with a gaze that seemed to be dipped in poison. Princess Zhenning didn't care about her gaze. When a person was in complete despair for another person, they would become extraordinarily cold. Noble consort Lu didn't care about Princess Zhenning and Mo Xiaoyun's reactions. If it was said that she still cared about these two children in the past, then the 2 years of painful struggle had completely wiped out that little bit of insignificant feeling. Since Mo Xiaoyao and Yili appeared here, most of noble consort Lu's attention had been focused on them. However, she no longer had the infatuation with Mo Xiaoyao like before. Instead, she was filled with bone-deep resentment. Noble consort Lu even hated Mo Xiaoyao more than Yili. However, she knew that she couldn't be impulsive anymore. She had always deeply experienced Mo Xiaoyao's heartlessness towards her. "Prince Ding, why did you order these two to assassinate me? Could it be that you want to become enemies with the northern tribes?" Noble consort Lu raised her chin and stared arrogantly at Mo Xiaoyao. She was now the future princess of the northern tribes. Her status wasn't lower than Mo Xiaoyao and Yili's at all. She didn't need to be polite with them. Yili was speechless. She silently glanced at Mo Xiaoyao sitting next to her. Was this the legendary hatred born from love? "What do you mean?" Princess Zhenning stepped forward and said, "What does this have to do with the Prince Ding mansion? So what if this princess wants to kill you? At worst, this princess will pay with her life." "Royal sister." Mo Xiaoyun looked deeply at noble consort Lu, then said to Princess Zhenning, "Let's see what Uncle Prince Ding has to say." Mo Xiaoyao tilted his head to look at Princess Zhenning and Mo Xiaoyun, then said with a faint smile, "Zhenning, although your royal father is already dead, the Dechu state probably doesn't have anything to do with you now. However, as long as I acknowledge you as a princess, you are still a princess. Using your life to exchange for her life? I had people raise you for so long just for this. Who will compensate I for the losses?" Princess Zhenning was stunned. She wasn't good at scheming. However, she also knew that being impulsive wouldn't solve the problem. She lowered her head and said, "Uncle Prince Ding, it's Zhenning's fault." Only then did Mo Xiaoyao nod in satisfaction. He didn't raise this princess and this prince for fun. If they lost their lives for noble consort Lu, wouldn't he have wasted a lot of effort? Therefore, not only could Princess Zhenning and Mo Xiaoyun not die, they had to live well. Tilting his head to look at noble consort Lu, Mo Xiaoyao asked gently, "I just want to become enemies with the northern tribes. What are you going to do? Do you want to go back and ask Yiluyi if he's willing to go to war with I for you?" "You?" Noble consort Lu was furious. Mo Xiaoyao's casual question was clearly mocking her. "What about me?" Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows and smiled. Prince, the northern tribe's crown prince and the seventh prince are here. Outside the door, Zhuojing came in to report. Oh? Tonight, this small Prince Changxing's mansion is quite lively. Let them in. After a while, Zhuojing came in with Yelu Hong, Princess Ronghua, and Yelu Yi. Seeing the blood on the ground and the battered noble consort Lu, everyone was stunned. Princess Ronghua smiled and said, "Princess, what happened?" Yi Li said indifferently, "Nothing." Miss Qing Yaina suddenly broke into the Prince Changxing's mansion with the intention of harming Prince Changxing and the princess. The princess panicked and hurt Miss Qing Yaina. "Yi Li! You're talking nonsense!" Noble consort Lu roared, but the pain from her wound caused her to grit her teeth and break out in cold sweat. Yelu Yi walked over to support noble consort Lu, who was sitting unsteadily in her chair, and asked, "What happened?" Noble consort Lu bit her lip and said with grievance, "Prince, it was Prince Ding and Princess Ding who ordered that girl to hurt me." Other than Princess Jin Ning, the other three girls rolled their eyes and looked up at the sky. This noble consort Lu was at least 34 or 35 years old. Was it really okay to act like a spoiled child? Chapter 787. Yelu Yi obviously didn't approve of noble consort Lu's delicate appearance, so he asked in a low voice, "Why are you here?" Yi Li smiled faintly. "Miss Qing Yaina isn't going to say that I sent people to kidnap you, right?" Noble consort Lu misspoke. She did come to Prince Changxing's mansion by herself, but she couldn't say the reason in front of so many people. Yi Li looked at Yelu Yi indifferently. "Prince Yelu, Miss Qing Yaina just accused me and Prince of instigating Princess Jin Ning to assassinate her for no reason. Now I want to say that she broke into Prince Changxing's mansion with the intention of harming the princess and Prince Changxing, framing consort I." Yelu Yi frowned, although he believed noble consort Lu's words more in the current situation. However, Yi Li's words made him speechless. At the same time, Yelu Yi was also unhappy that noble consort Lu had come to Prince Changxing's mansion without permission. Yelu Hong, who was sitting on the side, looked at Yi Li making trouble for Yelu Yi, but his expression was very calm. He just frowned slightly. Prince Ding and Princess Ding are the hosts, so they definitely wouldn't be so rude to guests. Moreover, it's unreasonable for them to instigate Princess Jin Ning to assassinate Qing Yaina. "But seventh brother, isn't Qing Yaina always with you? Why did she come to Prince Changxing's mansion?" Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao instigated Princess Jin Ning to assassinate Princess Jin Ning was indeed unreasonable. However, Yelu Hong directly ignored the fact that Princess Jin Ning had tried to assassinate noble consort Lu herself, obviously pushing the blame to noble consort Lu. Yelu Yi frowned. "Royal brother is right. I'm afraid today's matter is a misunderstanding." Princess Ronghua covered her mouth and smiled. "Seventh brother is right. Qing Yaina and the late noble consort Lu are so similar, so some misunderstandings are inevitable. 2 days ago, Prince Changxing and Princess Jin Ning came to visit. Could it be that Prince Changxing and the princess are still?" Mo Xiaoyun cupped his hands to Princess Ronghua and said respectfully, "Aunt Ronghua, you are right. I and my royal sister were reckless before. The matter is already clear. Us siblings have nothing to do with Miss Qing Yaina. We mistook her for someone else." After saying that, Mo Xiaoyun took a step back and secretly grabbed Princess Jin Ning's hand tightly. Princess Jin Ning lowered her eyes to hide the hatred in her eyes. In the end, she didn't say anything and silently agreed with Mo Xiaoyun's words. Yelu Hong smiled. "It's fine as long as it's a misunderstanding." "Then tonight's matter," Mo Xiaoyun said, "tonight was also a misunderstanding. Miss Qing Yina's sudden arrival caused us to have some verbal conflicts. Royal sister thought that Miss Qing Yina wanted to harm us, so she stabbed her. Please forgive me, Prince Yelu. If there is any punishment, Xiaoyun is willing to bear it." Since the other party had already said so, Yelu Yi naturally couldn't bully a 13 or 14-year-old child. She had no choice but to let it go. Noble consort Lu had suffered the hairpin in vain. With a sullen face, Yelu Yi bid farewell to Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li. He supported noble consort Lu and was about to walk out. Wait a moment. Shenyang, who had been watching from the side, suddenly spoke. Although Yelu Yi wasn't familiar with Shenyang, he knew that his position in the Prince Ding mansion was very special. He turned around and patiently waited for him to speak. Shenyang took a prescription written by Mo Wio and handed it over. As the saying goes, a doctor has the heart of a parent. Since she's a patient, this old man can't ignore her. This girl has had too many miscarriages, and the injury just now was not in the right place. Take this prescription back and let her use it. Although it can't guarantee that she will be pregnant in the future, it's still good for her body. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of the people in the hall became strange. In fact, Yi Li and the others already knew, but seeing Shenyang say this to Yelu Yi in such a serious manner, Yi Li's smile couldn't help but stiffen. Yelu Yi's face was so gloomy that it was frightening. Even if the people of the northern tribes didn't particularly care about women, that was only referring to the common people of the northern tribes. The imperial family's degree of fussiness about these matters was no less than that of the people of the Central Plains. Even if Yelu Yi and noble consort Lu didn't have such a thing, it was still very embarrassing for someone to say it in front of so many people. Noble consort Lu's face was pale because of Shenyang's words. She glared at Shenyang and Mo Wio with resentment, then left with Yelu Yi in a daze. After Yelu Yi left, Yelu Hong and Princess Ronghua naturally couldn't stay any longer. They also got up and left. Seeing that there was nothing for him to do, Shenyang stood up and left with Mo Wio. When he passed by Princess Shening, he stopped to look at her and said, "You're quite an interesting girl. Come find me at the Prince Ding mansion later." After saying that, he left without looking back. Princess Shening and Mo Xiaoyun didn't understand what Shenyang meant, but Mo Wio did. However, Princess Shening's injury was really too serious. Even Mo Wio, who was very confident in his master's medical skills, couldn't guarantee that she would be able to recover completely. He could only say, "Shening, remember master's words. When you have time, you must come to the Prince Ding mansion." Seeing Princess Shening nod, he then bowed to Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao and chased after her. For a moment, only Mo Xiaoyao and the other three were left in the hall. The originally tense atmosphere in the hall suddenly quieted down. Mo Xiaoyao frowned as he looked at the young man and woman in front of him. Although there weren't many things happening tonight, two things happening in a row made Mo Xiaoyao very unhappy. His gaze towards Mo Xiaoyun and Princess Shening also became somewhat unfriendly. Even if he didn't deliberately release it, this kind of expert's pressure still made Princess Shening and Mo Xiaoyun sweat profusely. Yi Li sighed softly as she looked at the siblings' stubborn appearance. She raised her hand to hold Mo Xiaoyao's hand and said softly to Mo Xiaoyun and Mo Xiaoyao, "You're tired too, have a good rest. Don't act rashly in the future." Mo Xiaoyun nodded in agreement. Mo Xiaoyao stared at Princess Shening and asked, "Do you still hate her in your heart?" Princess Shening clenched her teeth and said, "I hate that I can't tear her to pieces." Mo Xiaoyao sneered and asked, "What right do you have?" Princess Shening was stunned and looked at Mo Xiaoyao with some confusion. Mo Xiaoyao said indifferently, "Do you have the ability to tear her to pieces? I'm afraid that the next person to fall into her hands will be you." Princess Shening clenched her teeth. In terms of ability and means, she was indeed inferior to noble consort Lu. Mo Xiaoyao pulled Yi Li to stand up and looked at the two indifferently, saying, "The two of you are not allowed to interfere in noble consort Lu's matters anymore. Similarly, you're not allowed to help her. If I find out that the two of you have secretly done something you shouldn't do, don't blame me for being ruthless." Mo Xiaoyun's heart skipped a beat. Prince Ding's words meant that he planned to deal with noble consort Lu. Supporting Princess Shening, Mo Xiaoyun said respectfully, "We will follow Uncle Prince Ding's instructions. Xiaoyun and royal sister will not act rashly. She has nothing to do with us anymore." "Very good." Mo Xiaoyao nodded with satisfaction and walked out holding Yi Li's hand. Back at the mansion, Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao both gave strict orders not to tell Master Qingyun about what happened last night. Actually, at Master Qingyun's advanced age, he had already let go of many mundane matters and was very open-minded. However, as a younger generation, he still didn't want the old man to worry about this matter that they could solve themselves. Early the next morning, Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao had just gotten up when the guard outside came to report, Miss Dongfang requests an audience. Yi Li was stunned for a moment. She couldn't figure out who this Miss Dongfang was. Mo Xiaoyao disdainfully curled his lips and said, "That one from Infinite Boundless Mountain. Go ask young Master Qingchen to deal with it. I and the princess consort still have matters to attend to." The guard accepted the order and left. Yi Li asked in confusion, "What matters do we have?" Mo Xiaoyao said with a smile, "We're going to see my little princess and cultivate our relationship." In the main hall of the Prince Ding mansion, a woman dressed in white sat quietly drinking tea. She didn't seem to be angry at the master's neglect at all. She just waited calmly. After an hour, there were footsteps outside the door. The white-clothed woman's lips curled into a perfect smile. When she raised her head, she didn't see the white-clothed, white-haired, handsome man. Instead, she saw another white-clothed, black-haired man with a snow-white robe. Although young Master Qingchen attracted attention, she put all her attention on Mo Xiaoyao last night. She actually didn't see Su Qingchen sitting in the middle of the Su family. However, she could guess his identity just by looking at the elegance of the white clothes. She stood up and smiled faintly. "Dongfang Yu greets young Master Qingchen." Su Qingchen smiled faintly and nodded, "Miss Dongfang, you don't have to be so polite. Please sit down." Dongfang Yu nodded and sat down. She looked at Su Qingchen and said, "Is Prince Ding here?" Su Qingchen smiled, "Prince Ding has some matters to attend to. He has no time to receive you. Please forgive him." Dongfang Yu looked at Su Qingchen and raised her eyebrows. "Young Master Qingchen is hostile to me. I don't know how I made young Master Qingchen unhappy." Su Qingchen smiled but didn't say anything. Dongfang Yu sighed helplessly and said, "I understand. Young Master Qingchen is Princess Ding's cousin. No wonder young Master Qingchen is dissatisfied with my daughter." Su Qingchen shook his head faintly and said, "I'm afraid Miss Dongfang thinks that I am hostile to you. Miss Dongfang thinks too much. The relationship between Li and Prince Ding is their business. Whether it is good or bad, it is their business. The Su family will not interfere." Dongfang Yu said, "My daughter has no intention of interfering in the relationship between Prince Ding and Princess Ding." Su Qingchen said, "This is Miss Dongfang's business." Chapter 788. Compared to Mo Xiaoyao's merciless mocking and scolding, Su Qingchen's casual politeness and distance made Dongfang Yu feel more at a loss. Dongfang Yu looked at Su Qingchen for a long time, then sighed and asked, "You don't believe me, young Master Qingchen?" Su Qingchen smiled and didn't say anything, neither yes nor no. Dongfang Yu clearly took Su Qingchen's silence as a tacit agreement. She said mildly, "Young Master Qingchen, rest assured. The reason why I chose to marry Prince Ding as a concubine is not because I want Prince Ding's love or anything else. It is only to assist Prince Ding. Once Prince Ding reigns supreme, Dongfang Yu will naturally leave to pursue my own happiness. I will not miss Prince Ding, nor will I bring any trouble to Princess Ding." Su Qingchen said with a smile, "Miss Dongfang, you can go and pursue your own happiness now. Forgive me for being blunt, but Prince Ding does not seem to need your help. Also, it must be because Miss Dongfang has not left the mountain for too long, so you do not know some of the established rules of this world. For example, a concubine cannot be said to marry, but to accept. How could a woman who could say so openly that she wanted to marry Prince Ding be as uncompetitive as she said? Perhaps she really did not need Prince Ding's love, because what she wanted was something more important than Prince Ding's love." Su Qingchen had never had a good impression of these so-called legendary reclusive families. As for the so-called choosing a master on behalf of the heavens, it was even more nonsense. If they really had such foresight, they should have come out 10 years ago. Although the world's situation was not clear now, Mo Xiaoyao obviously had the greatest chance. Adding on the power of infinite boundless mountain, it was indeed not difficult to create a hegemon that could unify the world. However, even without the people of infinite boundless mountain, the Prince Ding mansion could still do this. Why did they have to take on such a reputation? A trace of anger flashed in Dongfang Yu's eyes. She found it hard to remain calm at Su Qingchen's lack of respect for her. However, Su Qingchen's attitude made it impossible for her to vent her anger. For a moment, her expression became a little complicated. Dongfang Yu had always been aware of her own strengths and abilities, but she also knew that her innate talent was useless in front of determined people like Mo Xiaoyao and Su Qingchen, so she did not want to embarrass herself. He looked at Su Qingchen calmly and said, "I think there are some things that I need to discuss with Prince Ding personally. Perhaps Prince Ding will give a different answer. After all, young Master Qingchen doesn't have full authority to represent the Prince Ding mansion, right?" Su Qingchen raised his handsome eyebrows slightly and didn't comment. He simply said, "Prince Ding is not free right now. Dongfang Yu was not in a hurry. I can wait." Su Qingchen frowned as he looked at the woman in front of him. He suddenly felt that this woman was trouble. What he didn't know was that this woman was indeed troublesome, but she wasn't Mo Xiaoyao's problem. Dongfang Yu was indeed very patient. Su Qingchen sat in the hall and accompanied her to drink 6 or 7 cups of tea. Even young Master Qingchen, who was always calm and composed, felt that he couldn't bear to sit in silence with such a woman. However, Dongfang Yu didn't seem to be impatient at all. She sat in the hall with a dignified expression and occasionally took a few sips of tea. It wasn't until close to noon that Mo Xiaoyao and Yili finally arrived. Seeing the stiffness and helplessness hidden under Su Qingchen's gentle and elegant face, Mo Xiaoyao's mood was obviously much better. As the host and guest sat down, Mo Xiaoyao leisurely leaned back in his chair and let Yili take the lead. Yili smiled at Dongfang Yu and said, "I haven't asked for your name." Dongfang Yu stood up and bowed, saying, "My name is Dongfang Yu. Greetings to Princess." Yili nodded and said with a smile, "Miss Dongfang, you don't have to be so courteous. The prince and I have some small matters. Sorry to have kept you waiting." Dongfang Yu smiled and said, "How could it be? With young Master Qingchen receiving us, my daughter and young Master Qingchen had a great time." Mo Xiaoyao smiled at Su Qingchen and said, "In that case, why don't Miss Dongfang tell young Master Qingchen directly? Now most of the affairs in the Prince Ding mansion are handled by young Master Qingchen." Hearing this, Dongfang Yu frowned slightly and said, "Prince, forgive my daughter for speaking bluntly. Although the prince and princess are deeply in love, and the prince also trusts the Su family. Since ancient times, the monopolization of power by relatives has been the source of chaos. Moreover, the prince hasn't really achieved anything yet. If in the future..." The 3 people in the hall silently looked at Dongfang Yu's words of advice. They were speechless. It was not that there was anything wrong with these words. At a certain time, these words could even be said to be priceless advice. But the problem was that Miss Dongfang was now neither a relative of the Prince Ding mansion nor a confidant of the Prince Ding mansion. Was it really good to speak so bluntly and speak ill of others in front of the Su family and Princess Ding? Did this girl actually memorize these words from a book? After Dongfang Yu finished speaking, Yili smiled and said, "Thank you for your advice, Miss Dongfang. I think the prince knows these things in his heart." Dongfang Yu frowned slightly and looked at Yili with some dissatisfaction. She said, "Princess Ding, although the Su family is your maternal family, as the saying goes, a married daughter is like spilled water. Moreover, you are not the daughter of the Su family. Shouldn't you be thinking of the Prince Ding mansion wholeheartedly? How can such a thing for the family be the way of a wife and concubine?" Yili was silent. This girl not only wanted to be a loyal minister and a martyr, but also wanted to be Empress Zhangsun. If the successors of the Boundless Mountain were all like this, Yili really doubted how they climbed to the position of empress. She should have been killed by the emperor because of her advice. Miss Dongfang, you don't need to think about these things for the time being. Why don't you tell me what you came to the Prince Ding mansion for? Yili finally couldn't help but interrupt her and ask. Dongfang Yu's beautiful face showed a trace of disbelief. She stared at Yili and said, Princess Ding, don't you understand? Finding that her intelligence was doubted, Yili felt very innocent. What should I understand? Dongfang Yu said, I went down the mountain to assist the new emperor. Then go and find your new emperor. Yili's mood was also rather gloomy as she replied mildly. Dongfang Yu choked on her words, forgetting about Yili for a while before she smiled mildly. The new emperor chosen by this generation of Infinite Boundless Mountain is Prince Ding. I am this generation's successor of Infinite Boundless Mountain, and have come to assist Prince Ding by the mandate of heaven. Yili looked at her, asking, Miss Dongfang's so-called assistance is to enter the Prince Ding mansion and become the prince's concubine? Dongfang Yu said unconcernedly, this is only a temporary measure. Since Prince Ding has already taken a wife, I will naturally not interfere. When Prince Ding unifies the world, I will naturally retreat with success. Yili tilted her head and passed the problem to Mo Xiaoyao. Prince, do as you see fit. Do you want to take in a female strategist? Mo Xiaoyao's reply was merciless. Throw her out for wasting I's time. Prince Ding. Dongfang Yu opened her eyes wide in shock, glaring at Mo Xiaoyao as she said, Prince Ding, do you really not want to know what benefits I can bring to you? Infinite Boundless Mountain's power is much greater than you can imagine. Mo Xiaoyao didn't even lift his eyes as he said indifferently, I have no interest in that Infinite Boundless Mountain of yours. Moreover, with a successor like you, even if Infinite Boundless Mountain could withstand 1,000,000 mighty soldiers, it would still be useless. Chapter 789. Such words were even harder for Dongfang Yu to accept than directly looking down on Infinite Boundless Mountain. She truly wanted to assist Mo Xiaoyao. She also believed that with her and Infinite Boundless Mountain's help, Prince Ding would definitely be able to unify the world in the shortest time possible, becoming a mighty ruler of his generation. And Infinite Boundless Mountain's reputation and position would also become even more resounding and consolidated. But she had never thought that Mo Xiaoyao would actually look down on her and the power behind her so much. Looking at Mo Xiaoyao, then looking at Yili, Dongfang Yu had a flash of understanding in her heart. Turning her head toward Su Qingchen, she frowned, saying, since Prince Ding is unable to accept this method of mine, then we can also change it. Mo Xiaoyao's expression was indifferent and unmoved, only to hear Dongfang Yu say in a clear voice, since Prince Ding is unwilling for me to marry into the Prince Ding mansion and ruin the relationship between Prince Ding and Princess, then, I can also join the Su family. The three present were all stunned. Mo Xiaoyao and Yili's gazes all turned toward Su Qingchen. Currently, only Su Qingchen and Su Qingyan were not engaged in the Su family. This Dongfang Yu would not want to marry Su Qingyan, whom she had barely met before. Therefore, there was only young Master Qingchen. Mo Xiaoyao's gaze instantly became playful, looking at young Master Qingchen as if he were looking at a piece of good fat meat. If young Master Qingchen could obtain Infinite Boundless Mountain's help, then it would obviously be very worthwhile. Of course, this girl called Dongfang Yu could only obediently stay at home to take care of her husband and children and serve her in-laws. Don't even think about it. Su Qingchen unceremoniously rejected Mo Xiaoyao's plan. Mo Xiaoyao did not care. He did not see Infinite Boundless Mountain's power as important. It would be good if they had it, but it did not matter if they did not. Moreover, if he really obtained Infinite Boundless Mountain's assistance, he would still have to think of a way to claim it as his own, lest another bored woman appear 100 years later to choose him on behalf of the heavens. Mo Xiaoyao shrugged and said, all right, this matter. I'll leave it to young Master Qingchen to handle. I will not ask any more questions. Li, let's go first. There are still things to deal with in the study. Yili looked at Su Qingchen hesitantly. Mo Xiaoyao pulled her out and comforted her. Don't worry, if young Master Qingchen can't even handle such a small matter, then he wouldn't deserve to be called the #1 young master in the world. Thank you, brother Qingchen. Seeing Mo Xiaoyao pull Yili away without hesitation, Su Qingchen wanted to throw all the booklets in the study at his face. He had worked so hard for the Prince Ding mansion. Not only did Mo Xiaoyao not feel the slightest bit of gratitude, but he was also constantly trying to make things difficult for him. Master Qingchen, Dongfang, you said softly. Miss Dongfang. Su Qingchen stopped Dongfang Yu and said indifferently, say no more, the Prince Ding mansion does not need Miss Dongfang's help. Most importantly, the Su family did not need a daughter-in-law like Dongfang Yu. Dongfang Yu said unhappily, Prince Ding did not say that. Isn't young Master Qingchen's decision too selfish? Su Qingchen waved his sleeve and called for the guards outside. Send Miss Dongfang out. No one is allowed to let her in. I won't give up. Dongfang Yu said firmly. Su Qingchen's expression did not change. Take her away. After sending Dongfang Yu away, Su Qingchen walked to the study with a gloomy face. In the study, Mo Xiaoyao and Yili sat together. The warm and intimate atmosphere made one feel unnecessary. Seeing Su Qingchen enter, Yili stood up and said with a slight smile, Big brother, Dongfang Yu has been sent away. Su Qingchen nodded, and his sharp gaze swept towards Mo Xiaoyao. Mo Xiaoyao was not the least bit ashamed. He said with a smile, what is young Master Qingchen doing? I did not say that. Isn't it that Miss Dongfang has taken a fancy to you? Su Qingchen said with a slight smile, that kind of girl, even Prince Ding does not like her. Who can she like? Although it was only a short conversation, Su Qingchen had already seen it clearly. He did not know how the people of the infinite boundless mountain raised Dongfang Yu. There was no such thing as love in her heart. Therefore, she really did not interfere in the relationship between Mo Xiaoyao and Yili. Of course, she did not propose to marry Su Qingchen because she liked him. Instead, she felt that it was convenient. Marrying into the Prince Ding mansion as a concubine, or marrying Su Qingchen as his wife, she could use her own methods to help the Prince Ding mansion dominate the world. At the end of the day, she only had her so-called ambition and achievements in her heart. But her ambition, in the eyes of people like Mo Xiaoyao and Su Qingchen, was simply illusory. Other than the power of the infinite boundless mountain behind her, she had nothing. Not to mention assisting the emperor of a generation. A talented general, the head of the harem, the woman behind the emperor did not just need to be smart. Smart women could be found everywhere in the world. Similarly, there were also many who were proficient in the 4 arts. But women who could stand side by side with men like Yili were one of a kind. But in terms of the 4 arts, poetry and even astrology, Yili might not be as good as Dongfang Yu. But if Dongfang Yu could do it, there were naturally other women in the world who could do it. And what Yili could do, there were very few women in the world who could do it. Therefore, she was one of a kind. Chapter 790. Young Master Qingchen continued, the 3 generations of queens just happened to belong to 3 different countries, having existed for hundreds of years. Therefore, it should not be false to say that infinite boundless mountain possesses great power. Otherwise, it would not have been able to maintain its glory and mystery for hundreds of years. Now, since infinite boundless mountain's successor has left the mountain, then, the others of infinite boundless mountain should not be too far away. Therefore, the prince now has 3 options, top, middle, and bottom. Mo Xiaoyao smiled thoughtfully, I am all ears. Su Qingchen smiled, the bottom option is that the prince does not need to care about Dongfang Yu. When she has given up, she will definitely choose someone else. At that time, the Prince Ding mansion will have one more great enemy. The middle option is that the prince complies with Dongfang Yu's wishes, taking her in as a concubine. At that time, infinite boundless mountain will definitely assist the Prince Ding mansion with all its might. Mo Xiaoyao said, I always only take the best option. Su Qingchen smiled. The best option is to exterminate Infinite Boundless Mountain. From then on, the legend of Heaven's chosen master will cease to exist. Good idea, Mo Xiaoyao nodded in agreement. Su Qingchen nodded, smiling, it is indeed a good idea. This way, even if the prince unifies the world in the future, he will not have to worry about being controlled by Infinite Boundless Mountain. However, the problem now is Infinite Boundless Mountain is not so easy to exterminate. Although their Prince Ding mansion disdained Infinite Boundless Mountain, it did not mean that others would think the same. As long as someone was interested in Infinite Boundless Mountain's successor, in Heaven's chosen master, there would naturally be others who would deal with the Prince Ding mansion for them. It was even to the point that if they were not careful, it might lead to people from all over the world simultaneously attacking the Prince Ding mansion. Even if the Prince Ding mansion did not fear them, fighting on multiple fronts was definitely an extremely dangerous thing. Mo Xiaoyao pondered for a moment, before saying, it is also not as difficult as you think. The only ones who can truly go against us are Mo Jingli and Lei Zhenting. Lei Zhenting was restrained by the Emperor of Xiling, and Mo Jingli, there was still Lei Zhenting in the middle. If he wanted to go against he would have to deal with Lei Zhenting first. As for the northern tribes and the northern region, they won't have the chance. Su Qingchen also knew that Mo Xiaoyao's plans for the northern territory of the northern tribes had a high chance of success. There was indeed something that could be done. He raised an eyebrow at Mo Xiaoyao and asked, Prince, have you decided? Mo Xiaoyao snorted, not bothering to answer. Actually, there was another path that Su Qingchen did not mention. Mo Xiaoyao could agree to work together with Infinite Boundless Mountain. After the matter was settled, he could also make a move to deal with Infinite Boundless Mountain. With Mo Xiaoyao's intelligence, if he really wanted to scheme against Infinite Boundless Mountain, Su Qingchen also felt that it would not be difficult. Looking at the two men with serious faces, Yi Li asked, is it possible that Dongfang Yu is not someone of Infinite Boundless Mountain at all? Don't you feel that she is a little too? Su Qingchen shook his head, dynasties change. Moreover, it is impossible for a family to always be filled with elites. But that Dongfang Yu is indeed someone of Infinite Boundless Mountain. Yi Li raised an eyebrow, not understanding. Su Qingchen said with some disgust, the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain's Fang family know a secret art, innately causing others to have a good impression of them. Li also saw the scene at the banquet last night, didn't you? Yi Li wanted to say, was that really a good impression? She felt that what Dongfang Yu had aroused was some hidden desire in men. How does Big Brother know so clearly? Yi Li asked curiously. Su Qingchen did not hide it, saying mildly, isn't there a legend that our Su family's ancestor married a girl of Infinite Boundless Mountain? Then what is the truth? There is indeed such a girl. However, the Su family's ancestor did not marry her. That year, he almost fell into her trap. Therefore, he once mentioned this in a letter he left behind, warning his descendants to be careful of Infinite Boundless Mountain's women, Su Qingchen said. So there was such a thing. This was the first time Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao had heard of it. Apart from being a little surprised, the impact on Infinite Boundless Mountain had decreased by a little. Yi Li pondered for a moment, then asked, since Infinite Boundless Mountain has the ability to choose its master on behalf of the heavens, why was Lei Zhenting willing to send Dongfang Yu to the Prince Ding mansion? Could it be that Lei Zhenting is also under the control of Infinite Boundless Mountain? Su Qingchen shook his head, it shouldn't be to the extent of being under control. Perhaps Lei Zhenting knew that with Lei Tingfeng's ability, he might not be able to deal with Infinite Boundless Mountain. As for the Prince Ding mansion, perhaps Lei Zhenting was betting that the Prince Ding mansion would not accept Dongfang Yu. This way, the Prince Ding mansion and Infinite Boundless Mountain would definitely turn against each other. At that time, no matter who Infinite Boundless Mountain chooses to support, with the powerful enemy of the Prince Ding mansion present, he would also be able to take advantage of the situation. Lei Zhenting was renowned throughout his life. It was a pity that his greatest regret was his son, Lei Tingfeng. This was not to say that Lei Tingfeng was not good. Lei Tingfeng was very good, whether in terms of personality or ability. However, he was still not good enough. Having grown up under his father's sharp edge since young, Lei Tingfeng clearly did not have the temperament to surpass the Prince Ding Mansion's master. Therefore, as the Crown Prince of Jinan Palace, Lei Tingfeng was sufficient. However, as the king who shouldered the entire Western Tomb on his shoulders, he was still not strong enough. That is to say, Lei Tingfeng will also not cooperate with Infinite Boundless Mountain. Mo Xiaoyao pondered. Then, Infinite Boundless Mountain's most likely choice would be Mo Jingli. Mo Jingli, the regent of the Dechu state. Occupying the richest part of the Dechu state, Jiangnan, he had millions of soldiers under his command. Most importantly, while he was vicious, he lacked decisiveness and boldness. Such a person was practically the best candidate for a puppet. If it were Mo Xiaoyao, he would also choose Mo Jingli. Su Qingchen raised her brows. Do we need to make a move on Mo Jingli now? Mo Xiaoyao shook his head, saying, it's still not the time. Right now, we still have to deal with Yilu Yi and Ren Qining. However, we still need the things that we need. Send someone to tell Mo Jingli that the things I want will be sent over as soon as possible. Otherwise, I will give the things he wants to Lei Jinting. He only wanted a few treasures. If they were in Lei Jinting's hands, who knew what Lei Jinting would want? While you're at it, let's also reveal Dongfang Yu's intentions to Mo Jingli. See what Mo Jingli will do. If that's the case, then Yi Ying sighed. Yi Ying was also an important chess piece. However, if they wanted Yi Ying to work for them while also stuffing people into Mo Jingli's side, that was obviously impossible. Yi Ying would also not be so obedient. Su Qingchen shook her head, saying, Li Er, you don't need to worry about this. If Dongfang Yu really helps Mo Jingli, then Yi Ying will be even more reliant on the Prince Ding Mansion. The Yi family would never be able to rise again. Yi Ying was still able to sit firmly in the position of princess consort largely because she was Princess Ding's younger sister. Once an extremely important woman appeared by Mo Jingli's side, then the Prince Ding Mansion's support and help would become even more important to Yi Ying. Chapter 791. Mr. Qingyun's birthday banquet could be said to have ended perfectly. Many of the guests who had come left one after another. This included Su Qingbai and Mr. Xiaoding, who had rushed back to the Western Tomb as soon as possible. After all, the Western Tomb had just been conquered, and there was still a need for someone to hold the fort there. As for the dignitaries of the various countries, including Genom of Gojoseon and Mo Jingli, they had no intention of leaving. Everyone understood that the true negotiations and game of chess would only truly begin today. Whoever left at this time would be the one who would be sidelined in this competition, thus losing the opportunity to seize the initiative. Glass City, which was originally already surging with undercurrents, became even more mysterious because of the sudden appearance of the Infinite Boundless Mountain's successor at Mr. Qingyun's birthday banquet. In the Prince Ding Mansion, Lei Jinting sat in the study, sipping tea as he sized up Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao who were seated at the head of the table, his expression somewhat complicated. Although he had already considered the possibility that Mo Xiaoyao might reject him when he had brought Mo Xiaoyao to Glass City, he still could not help but feel a little shocked when he heard Mo Xiaoyao's answer from the start. To be honest, if not for the fact that the Emperor of Xiling had once given birth to a queen of the Infinite Boundless Mountain, Lei Jinting was not sure if he would be able to reject such a temptation. However, Mo Xiaoyao had already rejected him. Although he was a little shocked, the overall situation was still in his favor. He naturally would not be so foolish as to push the power of the Infinite Boundless Mountain onto Mo Xiaoyao. Prince Ding's decisions always surprise I. Lei Jinting raised the teacup in his hands towards Mo Xiaoyao to show his respect. Mo Xiaoyao smiled mildly. Genom of Gojoseon overpraises me. Isn't Genom of Gojoseon also not interested? Lei Jinting sighed somewhat regretfully. If I said that I was really not interested in the power of the Infinite Boundless Mountain, that would be a lie to Prince Ding. It was just that, it wasn't suitable. Moreover, even at this age, I am still being manipulated by others. I might as well just die here and be done with it. If Infinite Boundless Mountain only had Dongfang Yu alone, it would not be of much use. After Dongfang Yu, there would definitely be others joining. Lei Jinting's grandmother was of the Infinite Boundless Mountain. He could be said to be the person who understood Infinite Boundless Mountain the most in this world. Naturally, he would not allow himself to be made into a puppet. I heard that Prince Ding has officially rejected Dongfang Yu. However, based on Ai's understanding of her, I'm afraid that she won't give up so easily. Lei Jinting calmly reminded. Even though he and Mo Xiaoyao were destined to be enemies, but sometimes they could still work together. And Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows and said disdainfully, so what if I don't give up? Infinite Boundless Mountain's descendant is actually like that. That so-called Infinite Boundless Mountain is also about to fall, right? Dongfang Yu was indeed very powerful. At least in terms of martial arts, Mo Xiaoyao had never seen a woman who could surpass her. Even among men, she could probably be ranked in the top 10 of the Jianghu. Since she was from the Infinite Boundless Mountain, she should also be proficient in the 4 arts. Also, with Lei Jinting's personal guarantee, Dongfang Yu was also proficient in medicine. It was just a pity that while Dongfang Yu was good at everything, her brain was not too good. Looking at Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li smiling at each other, the indistinct intimacy between the two of them made one feel as if there was an invisible layer binding them together, completely different from outsiders, while outsiders were also unable to come between them. Lei Jinting lowered his eyes slightly, deep in thought. Since someone from Infinite Boundless Mountain has come out, they will definitely have to choose someone to support. Since Prince Ding has already rejected her, who is the most likely candidate? Mo Xiaoyao did not hide it. Mo Jingli. Lei Jinting's face darkened slightly. Mo Jingli was currently in a standoff with him at the Cloudwater River. If he had Infinite Boundless Mountain's help, the one who would be out of luck would still be him. Mo Xiaoyao was far away, and naturally did not have anything to do with him for the time being. Looking at Lei Jinting's displeased expression, Yi Li smiled mildly. Genom of Gojoseon need not worry. If Mo Jingli is too strong, it would also be of no benefit to our Prince Ding mansion. We will naturally not sit by and do nothing. Lei Jinting was not someone who could be so easily convinced. Looking at Yi Li, he smiled, let Infinite Boundless Mountain support Mo Jingli, and then I and Mo Jingli will fight it out to the death, while the Prince Ding mansion will reap the benefits. The two of you are really good at scheming. Since that is the case, I feel that Ren Qining is more suitable. Being the orphan of the previous dynasty, wouldn't that be more in line with Infinite Boundless Mountain's choice? Mo Xiaoyao's smile was slightly cold. Ren Qining does not have that fate. Lei Jinting's gaze hardened, as he quickly calculated the meaning behind Mo Xiaoyao's words. The Prince Ding mansion intended to make a move against the north. He had thought that the Prince Ding mansion's greatest enemy should be the northern tribes. Seeing Lei Jinting's doubts and guesses, Mo Xiaoyao did not explain, saying mildly, Genom of Gojoseon can just watch. Mo Jingli is Infinite Boundless Mountain's only choice. Of course. Genom of Gojoseon has another choice. I'm all ears, Lei Jinting said cautiously. With a smile on his face, Mo Xiaoyao said casually, before Infinite Boundless Mountain chooses who to assist, exterminate them. SSS, Lei Jinting could not help but suck in a breath of cold air, staring at Mo Xiaoyao for a while before finally confirming that he was not joking, and was really proposing such a thing. After a long time, Lei Jinting sighed, Prince Ding does not understand Infinite Boundless Mountain very well. Therefore, he does not know their strength. Mo Xiaoyao nodded, I indeed do not understand Infinite Boundless Mountain very well. The descendants of Infinite Boundless Mountain had never offended anyone from the Prince Ding mansion. Therefore, to the Prince Ding mansion, the so-called Infinite Boundless Mountain was no more than an illusory legend. Perhaps the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain themselves also knew that the previous leaders of the Prince Ding mansion had never been suitable for them to manipulate. But, even so, Infinite Boundless Mountain still does not have the strength to contend against a country, right? Since they had planned so many things, it proved that the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain also had ambitions. harboring ambitions yet always hiding behind others, that could only mean that the other party still did not have the ability to fight for the throne under the heavens. Lei Zhenting shook his head. The reason why the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain have never participated in fighting for the throne under the heavens. It is not that they do not have the strength to do so. Rather, Lei Zhenting hesitated for a moment, seemingly unsure whether he should say it or not. Pausing for a moment, he still finally opened his mouth. The reason why they have always been in seclusion is because the previous lords of Infinite Boundless Mountain have always been women. They simply cannot come out and fight for the position of the 9 and 5 themselves. The Central Plains are not like the Southern Territories. Whether it is the common folk or the generals, they would definitely not tolerate a woman ascending to the throne. Therefore, they can only choose to control it from the shadows. After hundreds of years of operation, Infinite Boundless Mountain's influence has long since spread throughout the western tomb of the Dechu state. Even the southern Zhao northern tribes, and even the various countries of the western regions have traces of them. Does Prince Ding know why Dongfang Yu has suddenly appeared this time? Mo Xiaoyao raised his brows, not saying anything. Lei Zhenting said coldly, because quite a few of the people Prince Ding killed in the Emperor of Shiling's city belonged to Infinite Boundless Mountain. It was only because of this that the current Lord of Infinite Boundless Mountain was alerted. Prince Ding is right. Actually, the best choice for Infinite Boundless Mountain right now is Mo Jingli, because currently, Infinite Boundless Mountain has the most influence in the imperial court of the Dechu state. Also, even in your Prince Ding mansion, I cannot guarantee that there are no people of Infinite Boundless Mountain. Chapter 792. The Prince Ding mansion had been managed by the successive generations of Prince Ding like an iron bucket. Although Lei Zhenting had said so, he also understood. If there was a place that was the hardest to enter in the all-pervasive Infinite Boundless Mountain, it would definitely be the Prince Ding mansion. Mo Xiaoyao nodded. Many thanks to Genom of Gojoseon for your guidance. I understand. To be honest, I also don't have the time to deal with the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain for now. However, I can guarantee that when you are facing off against Mo Jingli, I definitely won't sneak attack you from the back. In fact, when necessary, I can even provide you with some information. Of course, this is only limited to Infinite Boundless Mountain. Lei Zhenting naturally knew that although the Dechu state's imperial court had moved south, news of the Prince Ding mansion in the Dechu state did not lag behind in the slightest. In truth, receiving such a promise from Mo Xiaoyao had already greatly exceeded Lei Zhenting's expectations. It was just that, how much of Mo Xiaoyao's words could be trusted was a problem. Mo Xiaoyao could also see Lei Zhenting's doubts, as he said in a heavy tone, since I have already made a promise, I naturally won't go back on it. If I were to fight with Genom of Gojoseon, it would still be better to fight openly on the battlefield. Lei Zhenting looked deeply at the two of them, before standing up and saying, I understand. Since that's the case, I will take my leave. I won't see you out. Not long after sending off Lei Zhenting, Yelu Hong and Princess Ronghua arrived. The four of them had a secret discussion in the study for close to 2 hours. Naturally, there was no way to know what they had discussed. However, the matter of Prince Ding and Yelu Hong's spying had reached Yelu Ye's ears without any hindrance. In the guest house, Yelu Ye's face was as cold as water. Dismissing the guard who had come to report, a cold light flashed in his cold eyes. Yelu Hong wanted to join forces with Mo Xiaoyao to deal with him. Not so easy. On the bed in the inner room, noble consort Lu leaned against the headboard with a pale face. The wound on his abdomen was still throbbing with pain after a night of rest. Noble consort Lu's expression turned even colder when she recalled how Princess Zhenning had pierced the hairpin into her abdomen without the slightest hesitation and how obedient her children were to Mo Xiaoyao and Yilith Prince. Noble consort Lu called after thinking for a while. A moment later, Yelu Yi walked in with a gloomy face. His gaze towards noble consort Lu was filled with disgust and disdain. Originally, they were just using each other. After last night, Yelu Yi looked at noble consort Lu with even more disgust. Although noble consort Lu had helped him a lot during the siege of the Great Chu Kingdom, he still had a lot of things to worry about. But after that, it didn't have much use. The only reason he hadn't abandoned her was because this woman knew how to please men, especially his imperial father. Yellow Yi couldn't understand how his wise and mighty imperial father had become so muddle-headed in his 60s. Even though he didn't have any real relationship with noble consort Lu, every time he saw Yellow Hong look at him with a smile that wasn't a smile, Yellow Yi wished he could strangle this woman to death. "What is it?" Yellow Yi asked coldly. Because of Yellow Ye's cold tone, noble consort Lu bit the corner of her lips in disgust. But she also knew that they were currently in Glass City and she had to rely on Yellow Yi for everything, so she didn't dare to get too angry. She could only force out a smile and said, "Your Highness doesn't seem to be in a good mood? Is it because of Yellow Hong and the Prince Ding mansion?" Yellow Yi looked at her coldly. Noble consort Lu said lightly, "Prince doesn't need to look at me like that, this isn't something difficult to guess. After all, Yellow Hong's crown princess is Princess Ronghua." Even though Princess Ronghua didn't have a good relationship with the Prince Ding mansion when they were in the capital, but this time in Glass City, her relationship with Yi Li is very good. If Yellow Hong wants to ally with Prince Ding to deal with the prince, he naturally has to start with his crown princess. Yellow Yi snorted, "If Yellow Hong wants to deal with it depends on whether he has the ability. He's just lucky to have a queen as his birth mother." Noble consort Lu said, "That's true. It's a pity that the prince is good at everything, but he doesn't have a queen as his mother." These words just happened to poke at Yellow Ye's sore spot. He glanced at her and said, "If you want to talk nonsense with then don't say anything. Recuperate well, lest you accidentally die in Glass City." Hearing the word die, noble consort Lu couldn't help but tremble slightly. In these 2 years, she had experienced too much pain and struggle, and she understood the horror of death even more. She also knew that Yellow Yi was dissatisfied with her. If she angered Yellow Yi, even if others didn't do anything to her, Yellow Yi would use some means to kill her in Glass City. Thinking of this, noble consort Lu couldn't help but resent Yi Li's good luck. She thought that she wasn't inferior to Yi Li in any way, but Yi Li was the princess consort of Ding country and was doted on by her husband and admired by the world, while she had to struggle bitterly just to survive. Seeing that noble consort Lu was tactful, Yellow Yi snorted with satisfaction. Noble consort Lu hurriedly threw away her thoughts and said to Yellow Yi, "Prince, if His Majesty knows that the Crown Prince has such a good relationship with Prince Ding, do you think His Majesty will be angry? Even if His Majesty won't do anything to the Crown Prince, what about the Crown Princess?" The people of the northern tribes originally rejected outsiders. This was also the reason why noble consort Lu changed her name to Qing Yaina. She had already lost her noble status. If she still stayed in the northern tribes as a woman of the Chu state, she would have been trampled to the bottom of the mud. Hearing this, Yellow Ye's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. If he could get rid of Yellow Hong, that would be the best. Even if he couldn't, he had to get rid of Princess Ronghua. Once Princess Ronghua was gone, the relationship between Yellow Hong and the Prince Ding mansion would naturally be in danger. Continue. Noble consort Lu nodded. If His Majesty knows that the Crown Prince is colluding with the Prince Ding mansion, then Prince Ding mansion will do something, or something will happen at the border. Yellow Yi lowered his eyes and didn't speak. Noble consort Lu knew that he was thinking and didn't disturb him. After a long time, Yellow Yi looked up at noble consort Lu and said, "I'll have to rely on you for this." Noble consort Lu understood and smiled. "I understand, I will immediately write a secret letter to His Majesty." The king of the northern tribes was old and had become more and more muddle-headed in recent years, so he favored noble consort Lu. He didn't even care about the fact that she was his son's fiancée. Although Yellow Yi only casually said this in order to bring noble consort Lu to the army, after all, many people still knew. This caused Yellow Ye's face to turn ugly. Not long after the secret letter was sent out from the post house, a gray figure appeared in the study of the Prince Ding mansion. In the study, Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li sat opposite Yellow Hong and Princess Ronghua, leisurely drinking tea. Taking the secret letter from Ah Jin, Mo Xiaoyao didn't read it and just handed it to Yelu Hong. Yelu Hong silently opened the letter and read it. His face couldn't help but turn green, and he slammed the letter on the table. Princess Ronghua frowned with worry, picked up the letter and read it. Her face was also a little ugly. If this letter was sent to the northern tribes, the first unlucky person would be her. Chapter 793. Mo Xiaoyao smiled faintly. Prince Yelu doesn't need to worry. In Glass City, if I don't agree, even a mosquito won't be able to fly out. But, once Yelu Yi returns to the northern tribes, I won't be able to do anything. Yelu Hong looked at Mo Xiaoyao and said calmly, "Doesn't Prince Ding just want to see us brothers fight?" Mo Xiaoyao smiled, "Prince Yelu, what you mean is that if I didn't exist, you brothers would get along well? All these years, I haven't done anything to the northern tribes." Yelu Hong was silent. It wasn't just these years. In fact, ever since he was made the crown prince, he had never stopped fighting with Yelu Yi. Don't think that the tribes outside the Great Wall didn't fight and scheme against each other. In fact, their fights were even more vicious and bloody than those hidden in the dark. Yelu Yi was a very ambitious person, but Yelu Hong wasn't a soft egg that could be bullied by anyone. Since he was already the crown prince, he couldn't back down. Therefore, the conflict between the two brothers wasn't something that anyone could change. Although he understood that Mo Xiaoyao was right, it didn't change the fact that he had been tricked by Mo Xiaoyao. Mo Xiaoyao smiled, "Prince Yelu, you don't need to worry too much. At least you and I have the same goal, don't we? You don't want to be defeated by Yelu Yi. I want to drive the northern tribes out of the central plains and take a few people's lives." Yelu Hong said unhappily, "I am the crown prince of the northern tribes." Did driving the northern tribes out of the central plains sound good to him? Although Yelu Yi had taken the land, Yelu Hong was indeed jealous. But it was still the land that the northern tribes had taken. The central plains was rich, who wouldn't want it if they could? Mo Xiaoyao said lightly, "The central plains is different from the northern tribes. Does Prince Yelu really think that the northern tribes can do anything in the central plains?" Yelu Hong raised his eyebrows, unconvinced. "Prince Ding, how do you know that it can't be done?" "At least not now," Mo Xiaoyao retorted bluntly. "The central plains isn't that weak. Even without the Dechu state, there was still the Prince Ding mansion. Even without the Prince Ding mansion, there was still the West Hill. The northern tribes want to take over the central plains, but I'm afraid they are not strong enough." Even though this was the truth, it was also a warning. Although Yelu Hong was unwilling, he knew that what Mo Xiaoyao said was the truth. Throughout history, the northern tribes had attempted to invade the central plains countless times. However, none of them succeeded even once. Even though the dynasties in the central plains had declined to the extreme, the ones who eventually destroyed them were still the central plains people themselves. Perhaps the people of the central plains were very fond of internal strife, which was why they had been replaced generation after generation. But at the same time, they were also very determined to resist the invasion of foreign races. When necessary, they could even put aside their previous grudges and join forces to fight against foreign enemies. This was also the reason why many foreign races had failed to invade them in the end. Yelu Hong sighed and said, "Perhaps Prince Ding is right. He wasn't sitting here to discuss with Mo Xiaoyao whether the northern tribes should invade the central plains. Before he could sit on the throne of the northern tribes, he didn't have the right to discuss this issue." Mo Xiaoyao didn't want to dwell on this matter. He looked at Yelu Hong and smiled. "Prince Yelu, don't worry. I also have no interest in the northern tribes. So, there isn't any conflict of interest between us, is there? After Yelu Yi is finished, and Prince Yelu becomes the king of the northern tribes, I will take back what originally belonged to the Central Plains people. Besides, there is almost no need for Prince Yelu to do anything. In fact, Prince Yelu is the one who reaps the benefits." Then, what are Prince Ding's plans? Yelu Hong had to admit that he was indeed moved by Mo Xiaoyao's words. As the prince of the northern tribes, he definitely wouldn't have any thoughts of betraying the country by colluding with the Prince Ding mansion. But his position as the prince wasn't that comfortable. Although his mother was the queen of the northern tribes, his father favored Yeluye's mother more. More importantly, Yeluye had more military power behind him than he did. And in the northern tribes, without enough military power, you were nothing. In the past year, his father had been very fond of the woman Yeluye brought back. Although he often mocked Yeluye, the pressure on him had increased. If not for the fact that he had no other choice, he definitely wouldn't accept the olive branch from the Prince Ding mansion. He wouldn't betray the northern tribes, but he had to protect his position and life. Mo Xiaoyao smiled faintly and looked at Yi Li beside him. Just now, Yi Li had been writing on the paper. Now, she put down the pen and handed the letter full of words to Yelu Hong. Yelu Hong took the letter and was stunned. The handwriting on the letter was at least 90% similar to the previous one, but the content was completely different. Yeluye's letter was naturally about Yelu Hong colluding with Prince Ding to betray the country. But the name of the main character in this letter was changed to Yeluye himself. The other party wasn't the Prince Ding mansion, but the North's Ren Qining. Previously, when Ren Qining and Yeluye signed the treaty at the Purple Thorns Pass, it was Yeluye who acted first and reported later. It wasn't impossible to make a fuss about this matter. Thinking of this, Yelu Hong looked at Yi Li with admiration. "Thank you, princess." Yi Li smiled faintly. "Crown Prince doesn't need to be so polite. Although my handwriting is slightly different from noble consort Lu's, it shouldn't be a big problem. If it was in the Dechu state, there might be some problems. The Dechu state's court didn't lack famous calligraphers. But in the royal house of the northern tribes, it was already very good to be able to completely translate a letter, let alone distinguish the handwriting. Even if someone compared noble consort Lu's handwriting, they probably wouldn't be able to see the small difference. But even if the king can cover it up for now, when Yeluye and noble consort Lu return to the northern tribes, it will still be exposed. Princess Ronghua frowned and said worriedly. Mo Xiaoyao said, "You don't need to worry too much about this. In a short time, Yeluye probably won't be able to return to the royal house of the northern tribes. As long as Crown Prince Yelu doesn't let him write a letter to the king of the northern tribes, it's fine. As for noble consort Lu, she doesn't need to go back. With the king of the northern tribes' love for noble consort Lu, if she really returned to the royal house of the northern tribes, it wouldn't be a good thing." Moreover, from the beginning, Mo Xiaoyao didn't plan to let those two people leave the Dechu state. But there's one more thing that I need the crown prince's help with. So many things were planned by Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li. Yelu Hong naturally knew that he couldn't just do nothing. He nodded and said, "Prince Ding, just say it." Mo Xiaoyao said lightly, "Send Helianjin to the Central Plains to assist Yeluye." This. Yelu Hong was a little hesitant. Although Helianjin gradually fell out of favor because of the defeat, he was still Yeluye's uncle. In these years, there were signs of him gradually recovering. Not to mention, many of the generals in the northern tribes' army used to be Helianjin's subordinates. If he really led the army, he was afraid that he would be nurturing a tiger. "Don't worry, Helianjin, I will help you take care of it." Yelu Hong just remembered that Mo Xiaoyao and Helianjin had a deep hatred for each other. After pondering for a moment, he nodded and said, "In that case, I will go back and report to father to allow Helianjin to lead the army." Thank you. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.